Vile things transpire even as we speak. I see a town in flames, and an old friend paying the ultimate price to reveal the truth.
This is not news to me.
Oh, then you have the sight as well?
No, never mind.
Judge us because we're loud. Judge us because we're free.
I need to take the ferry to Wortham.
I'll take you, but beware.
Getting a great deal of the Dodge Summer Clearance event.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is proposing a new rule that would force pharmaceutical companies that use taxpayer-funded research and development to come up with their new drugs to charge a fair price to U.S. citizens, which means if any portion of your drug's development was paid for by United States taxpayers,
get out while you can!
You cannot raise the prices on your drugs by 10,000% or 20,000%. And those are not arbitrary numbers, folks. Let me point this out. There are several medications that are available in this country where the markup is between 10,000 and 20,000%.
One of the men retrieved a strange artifact in his nets. It looked like a hilt of an ancient blade, but I know it must be more. The fisherman argued with me, but I convinced him to leave it in the safety of the chapel, a holy place,
that is what they
or a
charge us here in
holy
the
relic.
United States. Meanwhile, you go to other countries, Canada, for example, typical markup might be between 1,000 and 3,000%, which sounds like a lot, but when you figure that a pill costs about 8 cents to produce, the markup actually is a little bit less than a cent. Here in the United States, though, we do not have that kind of benefit because Congress, Republicans, and most Democrats have just allowed Big Pharma to run rampant with whatever the hell they want to do in this country. Now, Bernie Sanders' new rule would prevent pharmaceutical companies from doing that unless they're going to come out of pocket for all of the expenses associated with developing new drugs. And this is a point that I have actually been making for years that people don't quite seem to grasp in the United States when they come to the defense of pharmaceutical companies. We, American taxpayers, are paying for most of that research to develop these new life-saving drugs.
This is bad.
Almost 75% of the medical research carried out in the United States is funded by the taxpayers. Bernie Sanders understands that, and so he's blocking the American consumers from having to pay for our pharmaceuticals twice, the second time a hell of a lot more than the first time. Because they're using our tax dollars to make it. But if we want it, we have to go fork over a 20,000 markup to buy it. This rule will put an end to that, and according to a CBO score, it's going to save United States consumers billions of dollars every single year. And it's worth pointing out that the cost that pharmaceutical companies do spend out of pocket on development is recouped in its entirety within the first 2 years of a drug being introduced on the market. This is the period of time that we
Still waiting.
We have to put an end to it.
I don't have enough
Rising
arcane power.
pharmaceutical prices are one of the foremost healthcare issues in this country. Aside from obviously people not having health insurance. But we've got to do something about prescription drugs. We needed a leader on this issue, and Bernie Sanders in just 1 week proposes this new rule, says he's going to draft legislation for single-payer health care, and where the hell are the Democrats on this? Bernie Sanders, as we all know, is an independent, and he is the one taking the lead on the issue. Democrats are talking a big game, but they're not writing legislation. They're not proposing new rules. They're just out there saying, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it. Well, Bernie Sanders is one of the only people in Washington, D.C. actually trying to fix it. And he's not doing it because he's getting big money from pharmaceutical industries or healthcare companies. He's doing it to protect the American public and tell us that every one of us should be able to afford the same life-saving medication. You shouldn't be in the top 1% of income earners in order to buy your heart medicine that keeps you alive, or to buy your diabetes medication, or your EpiPens, or anything else. Those should be available to every one of us because all of us are paying for the research and the development of these drugs already. So it's unfair for any of us to be priced out of the system when we're basically funding the entire operation. Bernie Sanders wants to put a stop to it. If the Democrats have any sense, they'll sign on to this immediately.
A good choice.
I see the sword hilt that fell from the sky. It glows with a powerful magic. Do you know of it?
For the innovators.
We found it days ago. I wish we never brought it here. Come, I left Virgil to guard it. We will be glad to be rid of it.
I'm going back to Tristram to check on Uncle Deckard. Damn, it's not here.
While you were on your hero's errand here, I captured all 3 sword pieces and your friends.
Should have known. I must get back to Kane's house. I'm sorry about...
You got nothing to apologize.
Hedrick, I can't imagine...
I don't want...
I lived in Calgary.
Yeah, every father's...
Did it?
No.
It's your choice, Kane. Either use your Herodric arts to repair the sword, or your dear Leah dies a horrible death.
Oh, this pain, this destruction.
Man alive, SummerSlam 2000 was a fan-tastic pay-per-view. Some may look back on the Attitude Era with completely correct assertions that maybe it got a little too mental for its own good, but despite all the excess, the year 2000 just produced banger after banger, with SummerSlam being absolutely no exception. After all, when you have the original TLC match, a 2 out of 3 falls match between Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit, one of Shane McMahon's customary silly stunts, and a heated WWE Championship triple threat with multiple storylines in play, then you, sir, are witnessing greatness in real time. I'm Plumpy from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 fascinating facts about SummerSlam 2000. Number 10, nearly half of the roster were debuting. When it became obvious that the Monday Night Wars had firmly swung in WWE's favor, the roster experienced a sweeping turnover as wrestlers in WCW and ECW realized, the wetness of my socks is telling me this might not be the best ship. So began the influx of the beautiful year 2000 mid-card. Of the 31 wrestlers that took part in a match at the 2000 SummerSlam, 15 of them were doing so for the first time. That group included ex-WCW stars like Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero, as well as ECW alumni like Taz and the Dudley Boys. Kurt Angle is also on that list, as well as tenured WWE performers in the midst of their best career runs like Chyna and Too Cool. Number 9, it marked the end of DX for 6 years, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Shawn Michaels and Triple H came together in August 1997, and D-Generation X would change the wrestling landscape with their staunch pro-dick-sucking policies. By the spring of 2000, the group had functionally taken a backseat to the McMahon-Helmsley regime, and when Trips distanced himself, the 2 remaining DXs, Road Dogg and X-Pac, would implode, facing off very low on a SummerSlam card. X-Pac won the match in less than 5 minutes and was assaulted by Road Dogg afterwards. The 2 then went their separate ways, as X-Pac feuded briefly with Chris Jericho, while Road Dogg treaded water before joining a rap-based partnership with newcomer K-Quick, who would later become the worst person currently alive, R-Truth. Number 8, Chyna became the first woman to beat another woman to win a men's belt for herself. That clear? Excellent! Despite intergender matches being banned in the dub today, Chyna's stature and star power gave her some parity with normal-sized male opponents, and few batted an eye when she got physical with the likes of Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho back in the day. Chyna had previously held the Intercontinental belt by the time her and Eddie Guerrero teamed up to face IC champ Val Venus and manager Trish Stratus Venus at SummerSlam 2000. Per the stipulation, if either Chyna or Guerrero scored the winning fall, they would win Venus's belt, even if Stratus was the one being pinned. Sure enough, Chyna pinned a nowhere near legendary yet Stratus, winning the Intercontinental belt. It's the only time a primarily male belt changed hands with a female winning it by pinning another woman. Ow, my brain. Number 7, the Concerto was created for this event. In August 2000, WWE released a VHS tape, Remember Those, Dad, called TLC Tables, Ladders and Chairs. The video had been in production long before the advent of TLC matches, the first of which took place at SummerSlam 2000, pitting Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys in a battle for the tag team titles. The TLC name was too good not to spin off into its own match, and since the Dudley Boys were prone to putting opponents through tables and the Hardy Boys were synonymous with jumping off of ladders, Edge and Christian had to become the masters of the chair, and quickly. Thus, the best brothers, friends, cousins, whatever, began doing a move called the Concerto to give them a reputation as due to a good with chairs. It may be the only case in history where a tag team move was invented in order to set up a specific first-of-its-kind gimmick match. Number 6, Shane McMahon gave the safety speech before the show. Spectacular, but safe. In WWE circles, it's a speech often given by Vince or some other top official to wrestlers that are about to take part in a car wreck of a match. It's a friendly reminder that while the crowd is anticipating unparalleled daredevilry, to not go too far outside the boundaries of personal safety and comfort. The famed TLC 6 were given just such a reminder before storming the ring that night, and according to Edge, it was Shane O'Mac that delivered that sermon. That's a bit ironic considering that Shane McMahon himself had the greatest brush with death out of everyone on the card that night when he fell an estimated 50 feet from the stage rigging. Shane McMahon is all about the safety. Number 5, the Hardy Boys were originally booked to win TLC. SummerSlam 2000 emanated from Raleigh, North Carolina, a short Vanguard 1 trip from the city of Cameron, home of Matt and Jeff Hardy. Prevailing logic was that the brothers in baggy jeans would be victorious in front of their sort of home crowd. Edge has since indicated as such that the original plans were to put Matt and Jeff over that night. However, somewhere along the way, the brass decided to keep the gold on Edge and Christian because no one can have a good time at home. Edge and Christian had built good heat as champions, and WWE would lean into that by putting them over the local heroes. The Hardys would win the belt a month later in Philadelphia, but Edge believes they should have done it at SummerSlam. Apparently, Vince thought it would be too predictable, but Edge countered that with sometimes predictable can be a good thing. Number 4, The Undertaker was supposed to face Big Show. After 2 months out of action, the Big Show returned to Vince's muscle-bound Mantorium the night after Fully Loaded in July 2000. He re-emerged as a face, but then turned heel by attacking The Undertaker. The Big Show turning heel? I know, right? This was setting up a SummerSlam match between Biggie and Takey, but 2 weeks later, Show was written off after Undertaker threw him off the stage and through a table. Show would be off WWE television until the 2001 Royal Rumble. The reasons for this were that weight issues, cardiovascular issues, as well as a reported attitude problem had gotten the 28-year-old giant sent down to the Ohio Valley Wrestling developmental promotion to work for the time being. Show was even pulled from WWE's video game releases from that fall, while the likes of Kai and Ty and the Mean Street Posse remained as playable characters, which is one of a wake-up call. To fill the slot against Undertaker, Kane was hastily turned heel. Kane turning heel, I know, right? And the match was alright. Number 3, an oft-forgotten writer was the architect of the love triangle. It takes a lot to overshadow The Rock in a triple threat, and even more to overshadow him when he's the WWE champion. Granted, you could hardly call The Rock overshadowed in the SummerSlam 2000 main event, but the main storyline of the match didn't involve him. At the time, Kurt Angle was making a storyline play for Stephanie McMahon, which drew the ire of Triple H. The storyline, up until its premature end in September 2000, was brilliantly performed by all three and well crafted by its creator, Chris Kresge, a TV writer who was hired by WWE after Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara bolted to WCW in October '99. For the next year, Kresge headed television writing and was the driving force behind a killer product thanks to his insistence on storyboards, detail, and continuity. He was replaced as head writer by Stephanie around the time the angle ended. Coincidentally, the writing kinda went downhill after that. Never forget Chris Kresge. Number 2, Kurt Angle was concussed before The Rock even entered. Owing to their heated rivalry, Triple H and Angle got into a skirmish before Rock even made an appearance. The two climbed onto the Spanish announce table where Triple H would attempt a pedigree. However, the table infamously gave way and Angle's head was being smashed into the ground, giving him the mother of all concussions. Angle now credits Triple H for being enough of a ring general to get him through the remainder of his spots without further hurting himself, as his mind went completely blank. Angle even said in a 2016 interview that Stephanie herself had to call out certain spots, including the right moment to trip The Rock, as well as in order to throw Helmsley into the ring steps, because he was completely adrift out there. And number 1, Raw beat Nitro the night after, even with a major disadvantage. The week prior to SummerSlam, Raw is Raw delivered its usual horse whipping upon WCW Nitro in the ratings, 6.2 to 2.6. For those of you who don't speak Nielsen's, that's tantamount to Brock Lesnar versus Zach Gowen levels of dominance. The night after SummerSlam, Raw won again, but only by 4.9 to 3.5. However, that's actually still really good news for WWE. See, the US Open tennis tournament was in town, pushing Raw back to 11 PM Eastern while Nitro ran unopposed. Even then, Raw still beat Nitro handily despite airing much later. Despite having the upper hand, WCW still couldn't beat WWE, which in the Monday Night Wars was game, set, and match. Get it? It's tennis.
I am unstoppable.
Because f***ing tennis.
Need more time.
Chancellor Eden, it is of the utmost importance that we secure my manor from the traitorous rabble in Tristram. The caves to the east are too close to my land. They must be blocked, completely obstructed. I believe the Archbishop Lazarus has magically bound some arachnids of late. They may serve us well.
It catches all those embarrassing little mistakes before I hit send.
I downloaded Grammarly around my freshman year because I was just horrible at typing.
Grammarly is like my secret weapon for writing papers.
It's the perfect tool for your resume. You don't want any errors when it's your first impression.
I use Grammarly for important emails, social media posts, which there are a lot of.
I've used every tool out there, and Grammarly is by far the best.
I would recommend Grammarly.
Need more arcane power.
It's the party of the summer! Yeah, party! Remember Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog? Yeah, party! Remember Batista versus the Great Khali? That one's less good, but yeah, party! Remember Undertaker versus fake Undertaker? That's... right. Remember Triple H versus Shawn Michaels? Yeah, party! Remember Diesel versus King Mabel? What? Why? The point is, SummerSlam's history is full of ups and downs. For every glorious moment, like Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio, there's a Kane versus Bray Wyatt. For every WWE triumph, there's a controversy. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are the top 10 SummerSlam controversies. Number 10, Fred Durst flips off the camera. Fred Durst is the lead singer of Limp Bizkit, a totally respectable band that everyone still listens to. He has a pretty grungy and fairly hardcore public persona to maintain, and feels he must conduct himself in certain ways on camera to communicate that he is a radical dude. At SummerSlam 2012, when the camera panned on him in the crowd, he flipped the camera the bird, telling the audience at home that he hated them for some reason. Again, something to do with him probably being a radical dude. A decade ago, flipping the bird was just part of the WWE wallpaper, but under PG rules, it's a huge no-no, and rumours abounded that he was forcibly removed from the building. Durst refuted those claims, saying that he went backstage to apologise for the gesture, then left early to beat traffic. Sure. Number 9, Steve Austin won't play the game. SummerSlam 1999 was going to be Triple H's coming out party. He would win the WWF Championship and be all like, "It's time to play the game, rah rah rah, assassin." But then Steve Austin said, No. Austin resented the way Trips climbed the ladder, being part of the clique who were apparently bastards to a man in their prime. Austin wanted his pal Mick Foley to win instead and vetoed the idea, so the story goes. Another theory behind the last-minute change was that Jesse Ventura was going to be the special guest referee. Oh, and by the way, he was the governor of Minnesota at the time. It's rumored that the last-minute switch was made to Mick Foley so that Ventura didn't hurt his political standing by raising the hand of a villain. Yes, much better to raise the hand of a leather-masked psychopath, yes. Astute. Number 8, Gene Okerlund's potty mouth. Well, turns out Mean Gene Okerlund swears like a docker when he's startled. SummerSlam 89 is one of the most infamous wrestling goofs of all time. When the interviewer with a voice like leather and a face to match was introducing the Intercontinental Champion Rick Rude and a SummerSlam sign behind him fell down. Gene's response was... Huh, way to keep your cool on live global television there, Gene. He claims it was a blooper shot intentionally, but that the wrong clip was aired at the wrong time. So, sure. Either way, Jesse Ventura was forced to cover for the bald-headed old man painting the air blue. Mean Gene, you troublemaker. Number 7, Al Snow's doll's head sparks outrage. What does everybody want? Head! What does everybody need? A massive media outcry. Wait, what? So Al Snow carries around a mannequin head called Head, who thinks talks to him and sometimes he bashes people with it. Harmless fun, right? Well, wrong. When the Al Snow toy, in conjunction with SummerSlam 1999, hit the shelves with a little head accessory, two mothers from Georgia thought it was supposed to be an actual severed human head and raised more hell than an army of Steve Austins. Academic reports were published claiming the dolls trivialized violence to women, and in a media storm, Walmart pulled the dolls from their shelves. Apparently, children take their lessons about decapitating women from their dolls rather than, say, their parents, or the law, or the common sense that you shouldn't murder people. So the evil doll was removed from the shelves, and all future Al Snow dolls came with a plain white styrofoam version of Head instead, just to avoid future controversy. Number 6, Cena crushes the Nexus. Many people attribute the dumb, stupid, dumb decision to have the Nexus move on WWE Cena. But Cena doesn't book, he just wins. He does what he's told, like a good material player. But what Cena did book, what he was in charge of, was a match's finish, whereby he was on the exposed concrete, which would kill a normal man, then came back to pin Justin Gabriel and Chris Jericho and Edge both took exception to this finish, thinking it would make the Nexus incredibly weak. But John Cena overruled the Cena. Guess what, gang? The finish made the Nexus look incredibly weak, and Cena was later forced to admit that Chris Jericho and Edge had been right.
I don't have enough arcane
Number 5, Lex Luger wins by countout. When Hulk Hogan left the WWF in 1993, Vince needed another tall, blonde, flag-waving circus doofus. Lex was going for SummerSlam 1993 with plenty of momentum, having slammed the WWF champion Yoko Jr. on a battleship and going on the Lex Express bus tour to campaign for a title match. He was booked to win the match and the title in the main event at SummerSlam. Problem was, the locker room was all set to riot if that happened. Most people believed that Bret Hart should have been the face of the company. After all, the original plan had been for Hart to win the title from Hogan in a pass the torch match at SummerSlam, but Hogan refused, convincing McMahon that Hart was too small. According to Luger, top stars were threatening to walk out of the company if the bodybuilder was pushed to the top. McMahon relented, but didn't want SummerSlam to end on a bum note, so Luger won the match by countout, so the title did not change hands. Despite this, Luger celebrated like he'd won it. He was hoisted on the Steiner brothers' shoulders and waved the American flag as balloons and confetti rained from the ceiling. He hadn't won the title. Everyone knew that he didn't, yet confetti and balloons.
My mistress has accepted me. I'm close.
Number 4, Hogan and HBK have a clash of egos. SummerSlam 2005 and the first ever match between Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan. A classic, right? Well, sort of, but for all the wrong reasons. See, during the match, HBK went pants on head instead, overselling Hogan's offense, flipping around the ring like a washing machine. Originally, the match was supposed to be a face versus face confrontation made up after man win, etc. But Hogan nixed that, throwing a more traditional heel versus face matchup. Hogan got his wish, and Michaels, against his wishes, turned villain. HBK made the most of his villainous role, including an astonishingly good heel promo in Montreal, and all this was under the provision that the SummerSlam match would be the first in a series, with Shawn Michaels picking up at least one victory of his own. However, just before SummerSlam, too late to change the card, Hogan announced that because of back problems, he would only be wrestling the one match and winning. HBK went, okay, then I'm going to go bonkers up in this, and made a farce of the whole thing. Number 3, the WWE 2K14 panel. Drunk Ric Flair won't play your games. Drunk Ric Flair will take your game, and he will make it his game. During the 2014 SummerSlam Access event, a special panel was curated by Jim Ross to promote 2K Sports' upcoming game, WWE 2K14. Amongst the star-studded panel guests were Paul Heyman, Steve Austin, Daniel Bryan, Mick Foley, and a drunk Ric Flair. Ric Flair was coming up on the most traumatic periods of his life. His son Reed had died 5 months before, and it was probably too soon for Flair to be publicly working with the company. What damage did he do? He joked that Daniel Bryan didn't belong on the stage with the rest of the legends days before he was set to wrestle in the SummerSlam main event, mentioned his son's death, and stated that John Cena was a big drinker. WWE was a tiny bit absolutely furious. Flair was pulled from appearing at SummerSlam, and JR was fired from the company for failing to control the Nature Boy and potentially for having a drink on the job himself. Number 2, Owen Hart nearly ends Austin's career. SummerSlam 97, and it's the most infamous SummerSlam botch of all time, and when you know exactly what's happening to Stone Cold Steve Austin's neck, it's still hard to watch to this day. Austin was briefly paralyzed from the neck down, and the injury would nag him for years, eventually forcing him to retire from active competition 5 years later in 2003. The uproar that followed is one of the reasons why the piledriver is currently banned in the WWE, but still, you gotta hand it to Austin. He went on to win the damn match, rolling up Owen Hart and winning the Intercontinental Championship. Take that, kayfabe. Take that right in the neck. Number 1, Ultimate Warrior holds the company hostage. So, don't hold Vince McMahon hostage, guys. Do not do that thing. Weeks before SummerSlam, Ultimate Warrior was ultimate worrying about his status in the company and was pressing Vince for more money for his WrestleMania 7 appearance. Basically, he wanted as much as Hulk. Despite not being in the main event, he felt his star was equal to Hogan's and wanted $500,000 to make that ambition, as well as a number of other written demands, or he would no-show the biggest party of the summer. With his SummerSlam 1991 main event under threat, Hogan and Warrior versus Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel Mustafa and General Adnan, McMahon felt he had a gun to his head and relented, giving Warrior the cash, then immediately suspended him as soon as SummerSlam was done. Like literally that night. Warrior went backstage and bam, you're gone. Warrior then went on to quit the company. Perhaps he should have been glad that Vince didn't take Hogan and Slaughter up on their offer to deal with Warrior physically. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can even follow me on Twitter. Here, I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.
Completely change the black experience in America. And the fact that
I don't have enough arcane power.
SummerSlam has had some incredible main events throughout the year. The debut show, for example, finished with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage versus Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man. That's top stuff. Imagine you replaced either team with the Shining Stars. Instantly no one cares. But for every Taker Austin, Lesnar Rock and Punk Cena, SummerSlam hasn't half made some mistakes over the years. Mistakes that strike right in your heart and sting like the pain of 1,000 voices crying out. Well, not that bad. That's a bit much. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 times WWE got the SummerSlam main event wrong. Number 10, SummerSlam 89. Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake versus Randy Savage and Zeus. Sometimes, wrestling isn't hard. When Hulk Hogan beat Randy Savage at WrestleMania 5 after Matt Show had held the belt for a year, the obvious course was to do a rematch at that year's SummerSlam. The two biggest stars in the company going at it one more time. Instead, WWE thought it'd be a great idea to include a hairdresser and someone who doesn't actually exist. Great. Just great. Following on from the disaster of a movie that was No Holds Barred, Hogan had the grand plan to include Zeus in an actual wrestling match, even though he's just an actor playing a wrestler. Unsurprisingly, he was horrendous once he stepped foot in the ring, and Brutus Beefcake didn't have the star power to add anything to the match. It was a mistake, and is still a mistake today. Number 9. SummerSlam 2004, Chris Benoit versus Randy Orton. Vince McMahon may do anything for business, but he will also do whatever is necessary to protect his business. This is why when Brock Lesnar walked out of the company in 2004, Vince's #1 priority was to crown a new youngest ever world champion, enter Randy Orton. When the Viper beat Chris Benoit at SummerSlam 2004 to become the new world heavyweight title holder, there were two problems going against the decision. One, Benoit's run had been a bit of a dud as the company never got behind him, and two, it was too early for Orton to be put in that spot. Triple H and Benoit had been feuding only weeks prior to this, and given the fact the plan was always to get the belt back on on the game, why not just wait for your second biggest pay-per-view of the year rather than blow it off at Vengeance, which is what WWE did?
Pain, I must admit
Number 8,
our king
SummerSlam
is no
94.
longer able
Hogan
to
and
separate
Warrior
reason
versus
from
Sergeant
madness.
Slaughter, General
He orders
Adnan,
the
and
caverns
Colonel
to be filled with the
SummerSlam
Archbishop's
1991.
monstrous
What an
creations,
event.
and will
There's
hear
a match
nothing
made in
else.
heaven, and then
Perhaps the
match made
legendary ancients
Unfortunately,
themselves once
the word
dwelled
hell
there.
was probably
But now
the appropriate
we
term.
must
For as great as
desecrate
Macho
their
Man and
ruins.
Miss Elizabeth having a fake wedding was, Hogan and Warrior team up to face Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, and Colonel Mustafa, who were all hammering home an awful anti-America gimmick at the time, was enough to make you question what you were doing with your life. Instead of just throwing the Warrior and Hogan against each other and letting the Hulkster get his win back, especially given that the former Jim Hellwig held Vince McMahon up for money at the event, we got a bunch of people who could hardly move, almost literally for the Iron Sheik. It looked like he was about to keel over and just lay down in the ring at some point. Number 7, SummerSlam 2012, Brock Lesnar versus Triple H. While it's less talked about now than that time Linda McMahon was comatose, Brock Lesnar's return didn't always feature him as the dominant beast we all know and love. In fact, at first, the next big thing was essentially punished for walking out after WrestleMania 20. Losing to John Cena in his comeback match, he was then allowed to beat Triple H, but only by using a low blow, and then losing to him at next year's WrestleMania. You know, as you do. Given that CM Punk versus John Cena was sort of happening on the undercard, the Big Show had been thrown into the mix to just give him something to do, I suppose, and was lighting things up, switch these two matches around. I mean, we all know why this wasn't the case, but still, it would have made for a much better climax to a pay-per-view that still carries importance. Number 6, SummerSlam 2003, Elimination Chamber Match. I like Elimination Chamber matches, they're just cool. And after standing in one at this year's WrestleMania, I realised how much they must hurt. Honestly, that thing is harder than deadlifting. Closing SummerSlam 2003 with one wasn't the way to go though. At this point, Goldberg was the most exciting thing in the WWE. If the man himself wasn't so enthused to be there. Running through The Rock, Christian and Chris Jericho, it was obvious the next step was the World Heavyweight title and Triple H. And it was. For whatever reason, we all know the reason, Goldberg's first shot at the gold was on the Elimination Chamber, with Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Chris Jericho, Randy Orton and champ Triple H. Under one after hitting Bill in the head with a sledgehammer, the man with the second most famous streak in wrestling just straight up destroyed
More arcane power.
What? You hold off the switch for Vengeance instead of doing it at SummerSlam. Why not just cancel Christmas and celebrate your own birthday? Number 5, SummerSlam 2010, Team WWE versus Team Nick. The match was right, the setup was wrong. Put the returning Daniel Bryan on the Nexus side of things, you know, WWE fired him. Don't pretend 2010 Bret Hart is capable of wrestling anything, and make sure the Nexus wins. Beginning of the end. We'll have these later though. Number 4, SummerSlam 2015, Undertaker versus Lesnar. I do not think Lesnar versus Undertaker at SummerSlam 2015 was a mistake in it. Even with the odd finish,
I need arcane power.
I still think it managed to create the sort of controversy you want. It kept the conversation going post-show and into the next night's Raw. Plus the build-up. There is, however, an argument to be made that John Cena versus Seth Rollins for both the US and World titles may have sat in the main event spot better. It's never going to be easy to follow the match. Firstly, it may have stopped the awful ending with John Stewart, and it would have allowed the mentioned conclusion with the Lesnar takeover breathing. In the credits, maybe it wouldn't have been so controversial. Number 3, SummerSlam 1999, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Triple H versus Miz. I love Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's a pro wrestling hero, and in my mind, the best in history. The man. He is a stubborn so-and-so. During 1999, Triple H was working his way up the card, aiming for that main event hill.
I don't have enough arcane power.
To do that, though, against superstar opponents. Steve Austin was one of these, with everything screaming that it would indeed be the game versus the Rattlesnake for the championship at SummerSlam. Austin decided he wasn't too keen on losing his title to Triple H, so Mankind was inserted into the match instead. Why? So Mick Foley could beat Stone Cold for the belt and then lose it to Triple H the next night on Raw. It was like some weird political merry-go-round. Talk about taking the idea of momentum, just throwing it out the window. Number 2, SummerSlam 1994, Undertaker versus Undertaker. Right, okay, let's all just be honest here. While Undertaker versus Undertaker was an awful match, if you were a child at the time, like I was awesome. Two phenoms, Paul Bearer with his weird Duracell-powered urn, Leslie Nielsen on the hunt for the dead man. Admittedly, that sounds horrendous when said out loud, but it was and is nostalgic loveliness. Unfortunately, it going on last is another point of debate entirely. On the same card, Bret Hart and Owen Hart fought for the WWF Championship in one of the best matches ever. That's your main event right there, no matter what else you've got on. Number 1, SummerSlam 1995, King Mabel versus Diesel. If a tree falls in the woods, you get no one to around the hill. Does it make a sense? With an old adage which makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. By the same token, if the WWE Championship doesn't go on last, does that make it any less important? It's a question you really need to ask yourself. Because if you answer yes, then you're the reason King Mabel versus Diesel main evented SummerSlam 1995. The equivalent of watching two wounded elephants plod around the ring in agony, it was neither entertaining nor fun. Furthermore, the bout before it was the awesome Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon ladder match number 2. And on top of that, you could have subbed out Mabel for, I don't know, Bret Hart. There's always an exception to the rule. This is that exception. Let us know of any other poor SummerSlam matches in the comments below, and then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Next time you find me on Twitter, it's Miller316, and you can join the MWO, the Miller World Order. I'm Simon from What Culture, and always believe.
Do you want to see WCPW live but are allergic to the awful people of Newcastle? WCPW is coming to Greater Manchester on Saturday the 8th of October to the Altrincham Silver Plate Arena. Your ticket won't just get you a stacked card featuring Cody Rhodes versus Kurt Angle, but will also grant you access to our first ever fan convention during the day. Meet the What Culture guys, have photos with your favourite WCPW wrestlers, a host of other surprises, and VIP members will get to meet Kurt Angle and Cody Rhodes in person. Tickets can be bought at SC.com.
It's easy to often view SummerSlam as the red-headed stepchild of WWE's Big Four pay-per-views. Unlike the Royal Rumble or Survivor Series, it doesn't have dedicated stipulations or themes other than, hey, it's wrestling in the summer, it's summertime, and we're wrestling as well. Look at us in summer, and obviously WrestleMania speaks for itself. So what sets SummerSlam apart? Well, there are often several significant and sometimes shocking moments that happen at this pay-per-view. I'm Jack from WhatCulture.com, and here are the 10 most shocking SummerSlam moments of all time. Number 10, Miss Elizabeth tears her dress. Now, looking back on it, Miss Elizabeth's crucial distraction in the main event of SummerSlam 1988 isn't all that shocking. We've since lived through years of over-sexualized women in wrestling. We've had, bra and panties matches, we've had diva searches, we've had, where they wrestle in mud or pudding or gravy. It's just... Luckily, women's wrestling is now on the up and up, but back then, Miss Elizabeth's distraction was probably seen as very shocking indeed. The sight of the usually demure Elizabeth tearing off the lower half of her dress completely distracted the team of the Megabucks, that's Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant. And it also distracted the corrupt referee Jesse Ventura, and Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan took full advantage. Now, fans of the Eurovision Song Contest will probably accuse Elizabeth of gimmick infringement, because as we all know, Bucks Fizz did exactly the same thing some 7 years prior. Absolutely shocking, WWE. How dare you rip off Bucks Fizz like that? They're a national treasure. Number 9, the Summer of Punk comes to a sad end. The Summer of Punk was one of the most exciting times in recent WWE history, and the angle which lured many lapsed fans back to wrestling, including myself. Punk's feud with John Cena was an absolute masterstroke in blurring the traditional heel and babyface dynamic. It also established the Chicago native as the voice of the voiceless, or the voice of the disillusioned masses who were sick of WWE's stagnant, Cena-centric direction. Now, Money in the Bank obviously represented the peak of that storyline, but SummerSlam 2011 was the beginning of the end. Having dubiously fended off Cena in a controversial rematch, with Triple H there as the bungling, comedic special guest referee, he was useless. Punk was jumped by none other than Kevin Nash. Although he'd returned earlier in the year at the Royal Rumble as Diesel, Nash hadn't been a consistent part of the WWE roster since mid-2003. To say he was irrelevant would be an understatement, especially next to the new and cutting-edge Punk. Punk may as well have been jumped by, I don't know, Gilbert, or maybe the Yeti. Can't make the Yeti joke too many times, it's getting a bit older, isn't he? I'll do it anyway. He might as well have been jumped by Gilbert or the Yeti. Nash's attack allowed for Alberto Del Rio to cash in his Money in the Bank contract, and it robbed one of the hottest angles in years. of nearly all its momentum. The amount of potential WWE wasted in a single moment was almost impressive. Number 8, Paul Bearer turns on The Undertaker. Going into SummerSlam 96, all signs seem to point to the Dead Man defeating Mankind. Mick Foley had triumphed in their bout at King of the Ring, but it seemed only a matter of time until the Phenom got his win back. However, it wasn't going to be a straightforward task for The Undertaker because he'd have to defeat Mankind in a boiler room brawl. That's Mankind's specialty match, you know, because he lived in the boiler room. The first man to escape the boiler room and get to ringside and take the urn from Paul Bearer will be the winner of the match. It was much his specialty match in the way that the Buried Alive match is Undertaker's specialty match, because I don't know if you noticed this, Undertaker always loses Buried Alive matches. I mean, sometimes he actually, you know, wins technically, but he always ends up the one in the ground. Maybe he could take match Undertaker. Just a thing. However, Mankind bucked the WWE trend and actually won his own specialty match, but he didn't do it because of his own ability. He did it because of the dastardly ways of Paulie B, Paul Bearer. Undertaker reached the center of the ring first, with Mankind taking a horrendous bump on the outside onto the exposed concrete floor, but Bearer refused to hand the urn over. This allowed Mankind to recover, slap on the mandible claw, weaken the Dead Man, and then Bearer smashed the urn over his protege's head. It was a genuinely shocking moment and certainly deserves its place on this list. Number 7, and this one comes from SummerSlam 2010. This is Team WWE v The Nexus. Now, The Nexus v Team Team WWE at SummerSlam 2010 was shocking for 2 reasons. Firstly, it saw the return of Daniel Bryan. Now, Bryan had been harshly released following his strangling of Justin Roberts with his own necktie. It caused a bit of a furore with the sponsors. WWE released him temporarily, then they brought him back as part of Team John Cena, Team WWE, for this match. It can be seen as Bryan's rebirth. It was the first time he really broke free of the shackles that had been previously imposed on him by WWE, shackles which included embarking upon a losing streak, the worst of all storylines for any up-and-coming babyface, and it allowed him to prove himself to Michael Cole, who had belittled him consistently since he first started. Now we come on to the second reason the match was shocking, because not only did we see the return of Daniel Bryan, we also saw a massive push for Wade Barrett and Justin Gabriel, the 2 remaining members of Team Nexus, who, you know, defeated many established WWE stars en route to a startling victory which really transformed their careers. I'm obviously joking. John Cena beat both of them easily by himself. This is now looked back upon as one of the most shocking SummerSlam moments ever, because it really was a waste of an opportunity to get 2 of the most promising new stars over. Instead, John Cena decided, no, I'm John Cena, and I'm gonna, you know, be the strongest man in the universe, and I'm gonna win! And it was a bad mistake. Number 6, the Honky Tonk Man's Intercontinental Championship reign finally comes to an end. Now, we've already mentioned SummerSlam 88 once because of Miss Elizabeth's legs and bottom. However, this moment took place earlier in the card and can arguably seen as an even more shocking moment. Honky Tonk Man's record Intercontinental Championship reign is the stuff of WWE legend. The dastardly heel held onto his belt for a mammoth 64 weeks, but lost it in the most unceremonious manner imaginable at SummerSlam. The scheduled challenger was Brutus Beefcake, but he was unable to compete. Honky Tonk Man angrily took to the ring, grabbed the microphone, and demanded that the new challenger come out, whoever he may be. I can be anyone, he said. And then the Ultimate Warrior's music hit. Now, if you've seen any Ultimate Warrior footage ever in your life, you'll probably know how this match went. Warrior sprinted down to the ring, wasted very little time hitting his limited offense, and defeated the Honky Tonk Man, ending one of the most historic reigns in WWE history in just 31 seconds. And sure, yes, this popped the live crowd and it was a memorable moment, but it must surely be seen as an ill-fitting end to one of the most iconic reigns in the history of the promotion. Number 5, Shane McMahon's fall. Now, by this stage, we're used to seeing Shane McMahon do ridiculous things in the name of wrestling. Never want to take the easy road, Vince's eldest child proved his commitment at SummerSlam 2000 in the most ultimate way imaginable. In a hardcore championship match, never a smart move, against the Lethal Weapon Steve Blackman, never a smart move, Shane made the rather questionable decision to run from his opponent by climbing the side of the Titantron. Never a smart move. Of course, Steve Blackman's the best man in the world and he's absolutely fearless, at least in my opinion, and he duly followed and he swatted Shane off the side of the structure with a kendo stick like some kind of annoying insect man. You can't see me right now, but I'm swinging my arm like Blackman did because I wish I was him. Shane McMahon, let's not forget the boss's son, plummeted onto a neatly disguised crash mat, but it was still a terrifying fall, and Blackman duly followed with a hellacious elbow drop, thankfully made the pinfall, and Shane lost the match, but won you know, won our hearts and our respect, and isn't that the most important thing of all? And of course, this was the end of Shane's death-defying run in WWE. He never did anything quite as crazy ever again. No, I'm wrong. 16 years later, he jumped off the Hell in a Cell structure onto The Undertaker, who moved and crashed through the announce table. Shane, have you got some sort of death wish? Please stop doing this to yourself. Yes, it's awesome. God, we don't want you to die. Number 4, Randall Orton cashes in his Money in the Bank contract at SummerSlam 2013. Now, this pay-per-view seemed to be the climactic scene of Daniel Bryan's triumph. The underdog had built a huge head of steam, with most fans desperate to see the former indie darling finally capture the big one, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Sure enough, he defeated John Cena, clean as a whistle, you need him in the face, and hoisted the belt aloft. It was a happy, feel-good moment through and through. Well, then, special guest referee Triple H, he loves being a special guest referee at SummerSlam. It's his favourite hobby ever. He shockingly booted Bryan in the gut, dropped him with a pedigree, and turned to the entrance ramp where Randy Orton was waiting, Money in the Bank briefcase in hand. This was absolutely devastating. Not only was it a shocking turn because Triple H had been a face up until that point, it also symbolised the delay of Bryan's triumph. And looking back, it was a booking masterstroke because it made his eventual win at WrestleMania 30 all the more emotional and cathartic. It made it more of an emotional release. I'm supposed to be an English graduate and I can't pronounce the word cathartic. I think it's cathartic. Google catharsis and you'll see what I mean. Number 3, Shawn Michaels mocks Hulk Hogan. Now, few wrestling bouts truly deserve the billing of a dream match, but Hulk Hogan v Shawn Michaels was certainly worthy of such an accolade, or at least it should have been. The original plan was actually to have 2 matches, with each man taking 1 win in either, only for Hulk Hogan to nix those plans and say, no, we'll have 1 match and I'll win it because I am the best wrestler ever. I know what you're thinking as well, Hulk Hogan being selfish. I'm as shocked as you. Understandably furious because, as we all know, he's one of the best ever. Shawn Michaels proceeded to utterly take the piss throughout their bout, overselling everything in ludicrous fashion. He was bumping to the outside for, 1 punch in the face. He was throwing himself over turnbuckles. He took a big boot, got to his feet, ran around the ring in a circle, fell back down and took the leg drop. That was the end of the match. It was utterly ludicrous. If you haven't seen this match, it's really worth checking out just to see how far HBK takes his mockery, and it proves that sometimes being unprofessional can be hilarious as well. And I'd just like to say to whoever's editing this video, please don't do anything unprofessional here, it won't be as funny. Number 2, Brock Lesnar destroys John Cena. This is the most recent moment on the list and certainly one of the most shocking. John Cena v Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2014 saw the unthinkable happen. It wasn't so much the fact that Cena lost. Cena's actually lost a lot more than we give him credit for over the years, but it's the manner in which he lost. Lesnar utterly dominated the company man from pillar to post in a way we've never quite seen before or since. In decimating Cena and taking his title, Lesnar completed perhaps the most astonishing 1-2 punch in WWE history, having snapped the Undertaker streak just a few months prior. I think the moral of the story is Brock Lesnar is a very big man. Don't challenge him, especially if you're putting your championship on the line. And number 1, Owen Hart accidentally breaks Steve Austin's neck at SummerSlam 1997. In terms of landmark moments in the career of an all-time great, Steve Austin's sickening injury at SummerSlam 97 can probably be regarded as the most shocking incident in the storied history of the pay-per-view. It led to Austin being regarded as a legit badass and perfectly bridged the gap between his face turn at WrestleMania earlier that year and his push to main event megastardom in that infamous feud with Vince McMahon. A botched tombstone sit-out piledriver saw Stone Cold dropped directly onto his head by Owen, resulting in a legitimate broken neck and also temporary paralysis. Now, under normal circumstances, the match would have been improvised. Owen would probably have made an immediate cover, won the match, and retained his Intercontinental Championship. There's just one problem there, and that was the match's stipulation. The stipulation dictated that had Austin lost the match, he would have to kiss Owen, he'd have to pucker up and kiss Owen, his backside. Who made that stipulation? Was it WhatCults.com by any chance? Was it just me or the Adams getting a little bit too friendly with each other in these forfeits? Thinking fast, Owen tentatively manoeuvred Austin into position where he was able to execute an admittedly dodgy roller, but we can forgive him for that because he had a broken neck. Austin made the cover, the referee counted the 3. Everything kind of went the way it should have, but Austin was then forced to vacate the title while he recovered. Sadly, Owen never really apologised to Austin, and there was some heat between them before Owen's tragic death a little while later. In terms of Austin's career, it really proved him to be the badass that we all know him them as these days, and added an extra depth and an extra heroic quality to his character as well. And for those reasons, it is certainly the most shocking moment in SummerSlam history. So that's all we've got time for. This has been the top 10 most shocking moments in SummerSlam history. I've been Jack from WhatCulture.com. Please do follow me on Twitter at Jack_the_jobber. I hope you've enjoyed this list, and I hope you respect my decision to only make one joke about the Yeti, well, two now, very soon. See you soon.
All of my labours were for a bunch of rotten, stinking magnates will become our most valuable allies, and that the task is one that she can trust to no one but me.
Stacked,
I
featuring
know
Moose
my
versus Joe
place.
Coffey, the debut of the Women's Championship, Will Ospreay versus Marty Scurll, the WCPW Championship will be on the line with Joe Hendry, Joseph Connors, Big Damo, El Ligero, Primate, Grado, Drew Galloway, EC3, and GM'd by Eric Bischoff. Not just that, but on the 25th, we'll also be holding loaded tapings featuring the Kurt Angle Invitational, a pinfall and submission elimination record to face the Olympic hero in October. Grab your tickets for August at wc.pw while you still can. The 2 days are looking absolutely stacked.
I'm glad that fate has brought us together on this path.
Why is that?
You fight with both honor and ferocity. I know that a pure soul must burn. Eat. Classificata R.
From Chris, Mr. Cornett. I've been listening to your podcast, and your views are not what have been reported by certain people like Keller, Mitchell, and Madden. They've portrayed you. You're gonna like this. You're gonna love it.
Otherwise known as Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Is there a Shemp?
Actually, the Shemp would be.
And especially a Curly too.
I bet if there is a Shemp, he works for Keller.
They have portrayed you for years as a southern right-wing gun-toting racist homophobe. I'm sorry, it's hard to not laugh. This is not the case. If anyone with half a brain here's the podcast, or the previous bit we just did. It's not like you all of a sudden did a 180. Why have they done this to you?
The local Khazra tribes have become a serious threat. They attack caravans and are moving into areas where they haven't been seen before. We need you to take care of this problem for us. We'll pay 25 gold pieces for every Khazra head you bring back.
People to subscribe, so he's just subscribed to that series since then, and he doesn't necessarily make everything. He just hears shit and doesn't bother to check to see whether it's true or not. It's like leech money off people who are really in the wrestling business. Mark Madden, Bruce Mitchell falls along in that same category. With Keller, Mark Madden was actually a personal friend of mine. We had known each other through Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, because they grew up in Pittsburgh, not far from each other. And I used to speak in like 89, 90, 91. We used to speak to Madman from the show, and we would, as the British say, we take the piss out of deserving individuals. And he even came down to the Smoky Mountain show one weekend to visit us, and I actually drove him around in my car, bought him a Wendy's. And he ate that fucking thing quicker than I even did. But then he got a job that he always wanted to have in wrestling. He got a job on the remember the 900 hotlines? Like, it ain't over, I can't tell you now, but call me on the hotline. WCW had a 900 hotline. And I was in Smoky Mountain on this topic in 1994 or so, and I hadn't really thought much about it, but I hadn't talked to Mark Madden in bad words or whatever, but I went down to visit Jim Ross and Dennis Brent when JR was coming to do commentary on Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and Dennis Brent said, "How in the world is Mark Madden just beating the shit out of you?" What are you talking about? Because I didn't listen to Hotline. Well, Dennis had been in on the ground floor and set the Hotline up, so he said that I listened to it without paying for it. And now he's just going on about how I cheated this guy and so I got a lot of money, and that one of his things was the heavenly bodies would never work for me again because I cheated them on money. Well, that was true up until the time that they worked for me again, and Tom Pritchard to this day remains a good friend of mine, and just none of this stuff was true, but he was knocking me because, you know, he was getting over with Eric Bischoff. And so I called him, I tried to call him, but he would never take my calls. He did 8:30 at night, he would call me. He's in bed. What is he? Is he Arthur? Until he passed away, as far as I know, he's my age. He's older than me. He's 50-something, and he lived with his mother until, you know, maybe that's the problem. Is he didn't get out of working the problem in his life. Between his appearance and you know, living with his mother, but anyway, he would never take my calls after that, so I cussed him to her. I cussed him publicly. I did everything to try to get him to explain to me why that he had I thought we'd been friends, and he just rolled over, started knocking me in public just to please his fucking little, you know, prick boss, and then that just, see, then I found out it's what they call now, it's feeding the troll, but that phrase didn't exist then. When you let these fucking goofballs, you know, give them some attention by yelling at them, telling them that you're mad at them because they lied about you or they said a bunch of shit, then they just do it more. So every time that he would write something, then I would tell everybody what I thought of him, and blah blah blah, and then he, you know, and he tries to take credit. He's like Vince Russo. He tries to take credit. Oh, I got Bill Watts fired, and I got this done.
Well, nutrition and fields surrounding it have been resettled over the years.
Water, whatever. He's a
the
big
Highlands remain empty, save for the
fucking blows his mouth off. He's been fired. He's been fired more times than I have for running his mouth. Only he wasn't even saying things that people actually could agree with. He got fired from his ESPN radio job for saying that he wished that Ted Kennedy had lived long enough to get assassinated too. He just says shit just to make people mad so that they'll talk about him, because he's like Ian Rotten in the hardcore wrestling world. He has an inordinate desire to be viewed as someone by a small amount of people, and will go to any lengths to achieve that. And so in effect, we've already given him too much attention, but that's the origination of all of that. No, they just, you know, wanted to make shit up when they couldn't figure out any other way to get at me.
Do you suppose, I guess the reason that some people might have believed that is because
ruins of Leoric's old outposts. The king built more than one watchtower in his paranoia, but now they count even more awake goatmen and wild beasts. A tragedy.
But possibly it's because I was a fucking heel and tried to publicly piss people off with shit that I said over a period of a number of years on national television. You know, I don't fucking know. But no, I've never been inclined to see the return of slavery. I've never been an advocate of everybody owning all the AK-47s they could possibly have. I've never. I don't care who fucks who as long as they don't fuck me, unless I want them to. You know, but I don't know what their problem is otherwise than and they have a very big problem actually checking facts and telling the truth if it doesn't fit the point they want to make. Because I can figure out a way to make shit fit the point that I want to make and still tell the truth.
Yes, with these heathens at my command, the kingdoms of the world shall bow to the might of the Lord of Goats!
Guns, he's
they may have to work on the timing of the door.
And to be fair in their direction, I was never very politically active, as they say, until when I started working for TNA, and I just gave up hope on the wrestling business and just completely ignored it, because usually I was always in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week involved in wrestling. But when I gave up hope when I was working for TNA, that's when also my money started disappearing under the administration of George W. Bush, who should still come to my house every week and mow my yard. My money was disappearing. watching the news and start saying, holy shit, these fucking people are goddamn nuts. And that's when I started getting really interested in sometimes these things are important lessons. And I started getting really interested in finding out how the fuck these people manage to get elected. And I find out it's because there is a large segment of the country, unfortunately, many of them around the geographic location that I live in, that are still mad the black guy won and fucking, you know, would rather go to church and shoot animals in the woods than actually just not care who gets married and raise the minimum wage and do something for somebody if you know, if you got a little money or whatever, and just
summoning the spirits of the dead? I need to stop this. They're all ghosts now.
We can get inspection.
Can't carry more.
This is Phil. He's the receptionist. I know what you're thinking. There's no one
returning
there.
to town.
That's because Phil is a bondage virtual receptionist. He can.
I have some news. I suppose business will pick up now that the Skeleton King is dead.
A worthy choice.
more time.
You need a logo. Why not make it today? With Keller Brands, you can get your own professional logo and purchase only if you like it. Whether you are a small business owner or an artist, we have something for you. Just write your business name, describe what you're looking for, and let Keller Brands do the rest. You'll get a uniquely customized logo and a stunning brand. Turn over 1 million app businesses. Let's create a logo with Keller Brands.
The main event, I've saved this for last because I wanted to get some other things off my chest, and also because everybody's going to think we're making this up. It sounds like we're doing good makeup, and I promise you folks, just like when we're all referring to, let's speak the name Vince Russo, just don't say it 3 times. It's just like when Vince Russo said that he because woman was created a man's life.
I am so good.
I swear I'm not making this up either, but he said this, and woman was created to a man's rib, and therefore they should not be leaders because they were in a secondary position because they came afterwards, ignoring the fact that there had to be a woman first that would give birth to anything. I don't know, Russo's an asshole, baby. That's probably how it plays out. But anyway, guess what he said this last week? I'm not even gonna paraphrase it. I'm gonna read and trust me when I say this. He's not saying this to get a stir or a reaction out of people. This is the kind of shit that he really believes. And I think, and also he's so mad that after all these years, people are finally smart enough to him and figuring it out and realizing that everything that I've said so many times that everything is true, that he's full of shit, been full of shit all along, that he has lost it somehow. This kind of shit is the shit that you have to listen to when you talk to this stupid motherfucker or when you deal with him. And it's that will make your fucking head explode. And also, he's mad now because since all the people, the only success he ever had in anything was a 2-year period in the wrestling business when he had Vince McMahon and the greatest announcer of all time and a network quality television production facility and the 2 biggest stars in the history of wrestling, Steve Austin and The Rock, at the same time. And, I mean, you know, good God, you could take a fucking chimpanzee and sit him down at the typewriter with ammunition like that, he'd probably turn into one of the better writers. But he's mad now because people have figured this out. And I think he's gone insane. So anyway, this was reported On the latest episode of his podcast, yes, he does one from a... It is funny, he does it from what looks like a closet, since he accuses people of being in the closet. But my bathroom is bigger than his office here at the castle. But Vince Russo, on the latest episode of one of his podcasts, claimed that if the marks and the dirt sheet crowd like certain wrestlers as much as they do, then they must be gay, or at least somewhere beyond exclusively heterosexual. He said the writers of a couple of the major wrestling sites, because, and we know he's talking about Mike Johnson, a PW Insider, because Mike Johnson, every time that Russo gets caught doing something stupid or lying about something, Mike Johnson has the evidence and reports that Russo was lying about something. As a matter of fact, Russo emailed Mike Johnson the evidence himself one time, because Russo can't figure out how to work that newfangled email thing, and he keeps emailing the wrong people. and he doesn't like Dave Meltzer, and he doesn't like basically all the people that tell other people how full of shit he is. And he tries to discredit him. Sort of sounds like Donald Trump, who he apparently voted for. So Russo said, they all look like losers about the...
Why is Weekend Update returning early?
This week was crazy.
And crazy times need bold reporting.
O.J. Simpson will be released from prison, and ladies, he's single.
Weekend Update live in prime time starts Thursday, 9/8 Central on NBC.
So Russo said, they all look like losers about the dirt sheet writers. They all look like marks. And this is verbatim. Russo claimed he has no problem with the gay community, saying, bro, whatever floats your boat, who cares? It's not up to me to judge you. I've worked with gay wrestlers. I could care less. With that being said, I'm looking at these kind of individuals, and I'm looking at reactions to other men. That's what we're talking about here. The way they react to Kevin Owens, the way they react to Sami Zayn, the way they react to Samoa Joe and Finn Balor. Their reactions to other men. I just watched the Giants game. I'm not whacking myself off when Buster Posey comes to the plate. I'm not taking it out and playing with it, and I love Buster Posey. But I love him in the sense that he's on my team and I want them to win. But I don't start chanting, this is awesome, when he steps up to the plate. It's not a normal reaction for men to react to other men in that way. It's not a normal reaction. Russo added, I'm sorry if you hear cackling. Stacy has just walked in the room and she has not heard this, and she cannot, she's stuffing a sweatshirt in her mouth. So is she. Anyway, Russo added, so I've come to the conclusion, if you're part of the NXT crowd, the people who were in Orlando, the This Is Awesome crowd, you fall in 3 categories. It's this simple, bro. You're either A, homosexual, okay, you like men. For you to react this way, you have to like men. B, you're either not homosexual but have homosexual tendencies, or C, you're in the closet. It's that simple, bro, because men do not react to other men that way. It's not a normal function, bro. I had someone tweet me after I made a tweet that Finn Balor has to hit the gym. Bro, I literally had a guy send me a picture of Finn Balor with his shirt off. Bro, you are probably a homosexual. If you are searching the internet for pictures of Finn Balor without his shirt on and taking the time to send it to me, you fall in one of these categories. Let me just let all that sink in for just a second. Let's Okay, first of all, it ain't hard to find a picture of a professional wrestler on the internet without a shirt on. Secondly, if you question his physical fitness, and that's like me questioning somebody's physical fitness, because if you notice, that's something I don't do, because I got no room to talk there. If you question a guy's physical fitness and somebody responds by sending you a picture of the guy who looks in much better physical shape than you have ever been in your sorry, misfucking informed life, then I think that's an accurate response. And lastly, but not even lastly, we're going to talk about this for a minute, but lastly on this, yes, the guy took time to send it to you to tell you, Vince Russo, you fucking piece of shit, that you're an idiot. Just like everybody now is figuring out you're an idiot. The things you say. Remember when I said it used to drive me crazy to be in the room with this motherfucker and I would leave with a twitch? This kind of shit's why. And he wasn't even religious then. And it still would drive you insane to listen to the fucking verbal effluvia and the stream, the literal river, the goddamn waterfall of ignorance that comes out of his mouth about every subject. And now he's mad. I've criticized the This Is Awesome crowd for thinking that things are awesome that don't necessarily draw money and aren't really awesome. But I never said they were gay. I just said they ought to be a little bit smarter about the wrestling business. The very business, the only success that he has ever had in his miserable life, he failed at running a video store. He obviously failed, even though he said he went to school for journalism. He obviously failed at journalism because he can't even spell. He failed at running his first website because he tried to fucking cheat the guy that was actually doing all the work, and that fell apart.
All 3 of the harmful foods I'm going to show you right now are labeled and marketed as health foods. When I reveal them to you, you'll be shocked. I'm also going to reveal to you my #1 carb you should never eat, ever. This man-made carbohydrate is banned in Canada, China, and the European Union, yet somehow it's still legal in the US, where it's heavily marketed to children. The FDA is finally considering banning some of the items I'm going to share with you today. However, I created this presentation so you can know which foods you need to avoid now.
Because he tried to fucking cheat the guy that was actually doing all the work, and that fell apart. You remember that? He's failed at every wrestling venture he's ever had in the last 25 years, except for that 2-year period with all those advantages. He is a failure at life and a failure as a human being, and now he is mad. He's mad at the people who have come to the conclusion that, yes, he's a fucking failure and he doesn't have a goddamn clue what he's talking about. So his way to insult them is calling them all gay when he's been in the same business that they supposedly love and that they do love and that he should have loved, because that's the business he was in. And it's the only thing that's ever given him any measure of success whatsoever is wrestling. And now everybody that likes wrestling is apparently gay, which in his mind equates to bad. You know what his problem is? Women don't want to fuck him, and no guy would want to suck his dick. That's what his problem is. I'm waiting for the goddamn picture of Vince Russo with a blow-up sheep, because even a self-respecting living sheep would not want Vince Russo to fuck it.
Does this mean, if this is truly what he believes, does that mean all these years he's been writing wrestling, he's been actually writing homoerotic fiction?
Apparently, and not even good homoerotic fiction. And is this why that he always, every time he was in charge of a women's division, they were skanks and hoes and strippers, and they fucking had their tits flopping out, and etc. Because that's what he thinks of women? Is that why he was so fixated on Sable and her white cotton panties that I used to have to sit and listen to all the time? Can you imagine her in white cotton panties? No, if you want to trip my trigger, for one thing, Sable wouldn't do it, but if you put somebody hot like Sonny or somebody of that era that was really hot in some goddamn black leather and some fucking spandex and some goddamn fishnets and some crotchless stuff, I'm right there with you. But white cotton panties? What the fuck's the matter with you? Are you fixated on your grandmother or your grandfather? So this motherfucker legitimately says this shit, and I'm telling you, from knowing him, and since I've been right about everything else, and it's come to light over the past several years, I'm right about this. He's not just saying this shit to stir people up and get people to listen. He really believes this shit. He really does, folks. He really believes that a woman was created from a man's rib. He really believes that if you chant "this is awesome" at a wrestling match, you're gay. And he also really believes that the shit that he did actually was good. And now that everybody knows that it wasn't, and that the success that happened while he was around for that 2-year period was due to, oh, I don't know, talented people that were overcoming the fucking anchors that he was putting around their neck. He's help me try to understand any of this.
I mean, I don't know what there is to say. In 2017, when you label everyone who you don't like as being homosexual as some sort of verbal punishment, that says more about you than it does about them.
And I'm just, and how do you make that leap? fans have chanted at wrestling matches. My problem with the chants, to be quite honest with you, is when I was a kid and I was going to the matches as a fan, people would chant for Jerry Jarrett, "Go, Jerry, go," or the Rock and Roll, they chant rock and roll, or whatever, cheering for the babyface. I hate it when the fans cheer and chant for the heel because that fucks up the whole psychology of the match, and it's harder on the performers, except, well, now it's not. Because
welcome to Weekend Update. It's gonna get worse.
It's a much more important show. Oh.
No!
You better believe that.
O.J. Simpson to be released from prison this fall. And ladies, he's single.
President Trump started building his wall, a wall between millions of Americans and their health care.
Of the match, and it's harder on the performers, except, well, now it's not because they just have video game matches in a lot of cases, but back when we were trying to be baby faces and heels, it fucked up the whole match when the people cheered. You should have been some of the matches. The Midnight Express couldn't even turn heel with as good as they were when they were in the ring with the Dynamic Dudes because people hated the dudes so bad, and it fucked up the match because the shit that you would do was not getting the proper response. So yes, I have in some cases taking people to task for chanting things that you know just didn't make a lot of sense, but that doesn't mean they're gay. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. I'm sure there's gay people and straight people and everybody chanting "this is awesome." And if it really is awesome, then why the fuck shouldn't they be allowed to chant that? They paid their money. I think it's somewhat liberally applied these days. But on occasion, there are things that are really awesome. And when you chant that, you're not gay. There's nothing wrong with it if you are, because it has no bearing on this. And you know, if you're you know, but here's the thing, he's religious. He's a religious conservative. Tell me who is responsible for more homosexual pedophilia than Catholic priests, religious people of that ilk, and conservative Republican politicians.
You know, by the way, the quote you read left out the first line of what he wrote, which was, look at a picture of Mike Johnson, look at a picture of Dave Shearer, look at a picture of Dave Meltzer. There's a trend here. They all look like losers.
Okay, see, that was not in the report that I was so... Well, yes, yeah, he's saying that because imagine that. Those are the exact people who as my Aunt Lola used to say, everything you do gets blamed right on you. They're the people who tell folks when Russo lies, or when he fucks something up, or when he's completely full of shit or says something insane like this. They are reporters. They are journalists. They disseminate news, Vincenzo. And that's why you don't like him, because everything he does gets blamed right on him. So anyway, so now you know. If you're a wrestling fan, and I've never known this, and it's going to come as a shock, I guess, to Stacy, that we're going to have to get divorced now because I'm playing for the other team. And Brian, I never knew this about you. Suzanne is going to be upset. Yeah. But well, maybe she won't be. Who knows? You never know about it. But if you like wrestling, folks, and you're a guy, you're gay. And if you chant "this is awesome," or if you read or write newsletters, you're gay, according to Vince Shitstain Russo, the Archbishop of Talentberry, who has delivered the Sermon on the Mount. I guess he got this on a tablet from Moses, who was impersonated by Mel Brooks famously one time, and there were originally 15 commandments, but he dropped one. I have these 10 commandments. One of them is, if you chant "this is awesome" at NXT, you like to suck cock.
Who was the wrestler he pointed out wasn't in shape?
Finn Balor.
Finn Balor's not in shape, bro. Here's a picture. He is in shape. You're gay.
Yeah. What is he, 6? No wonder he lived in Colorado. He ought to be on South Park, Vince Russo. And then I heard Colorado kicked him out. Evansville, Indiana took him. If they wanted to give the state of Indiana a fucking enema, they'd stick the nozzle in Evansville. So I guess it's his last sanctuary before he gets booted out to a fucking island somewhere in the fucking Pacific. You know, I was stressing to think, well, what do I ask Kevin about? Because we can, obviously, and we do, whenever we talk on the phone, we can talk for an hour and a half about complete bullshit. Yeah. So what do I ask you about? And of all the things that came up, and we want to talk about Jim Barnett and Eddie Graham and your time with Dusty Rhodes and the last days of WCW and East Tennessee and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about, because he was in the news again lately, when they mentioned him on Raw, and Jim Herd, the guy who took over and ran WCW when Turner Broadcasting bought Jim Crockett Promotions out for the first 3 or 4 years. I have made him out to be the biggest idiot that has ever walked the face of the earth. People ask me all the time, was Jim Herd really as stupid as you claim? I don't know if that's possible, but I put it to an impartial observer who had to sit on the booking committee longer than I did. What was Jim Herd like to deal with in a wrestling business context?
Jimmy, you were kind to him. If this was the 1500s, he would have been the village goat and sat on the wall and fell over, and we would have paid him a shilling and gone around laughing, except that he was the mayor of that town. But,
bring the fool. We'd like the fool, please. Bring the fool.
Yeah.
And then he would have been followed by the ding-dongs.
Yeah, the ding-dongs.
And the hunchbacks. Wait, the hunchbacks, you've got something here. He was the village. Yeah. He came up with ding-dongs and hunchbacks.
Yeah, and Alice, I'll tell you a story. And I thought Jimmy was going to either kill me or split his gut laughing. You know, this is after the ding-dongs came about, where they were ringing the bell, and they go in the ring, and they had all these little bells sewn to their outfits, and as soon as they're locked up, a quart of them fell off. They did one move. By a minute and a half, the ring was just full of these little bells, and guys were tripping on, getting hurt.
So hold on, let me understand this. The gimmick was that these guys were covered in bells?
They were the ding-dongs.
The ding-dongs.
Kevin, you've got to make her understand that Jim Herd desperately wanted to take the children's audience away from Vince McMahon, so he came up with the children-friendly tag team of the Ding Dongs from Belleville, Illinois. They were masked wrestlers in bodysuits with bells attached all over them, and they had a ship's bell in the corner of the ring. I ain't making this up. And when the guy was getting the heat on him, the other guy on the corner was working the apron by ringing the bell for all the children to cheer for them to hulk up. I ain't making this up.
Oh my God!
And when the guy would hulk up and make the tag and dive, and as he dove, another couple of dozen of bells would go over the ring and onto the floor. As the other ding dong was making the comeback, he'd take the bell and keep on ringing it, ding, ding, ding. And when they made the tag, they ring the big bell. So we had gone through that fiasco.
And the fans started booing about a minute and a half in, and it got more ugly as the match wore on.
And like Jimmy said, it was so uneasy feeling. It was like you went into a Thanksgiving party at your in-laws, and you went over and kicked their grandmother in the face. The people were horrified beyond belief, but didn't know what to do, except they started all screaming at once. And, and Herd never put it over, didn't say, that was the shits, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. That was nothing. The next one he comes up with.
Everybody had tried to tell him this will not work. This is not something that we should do. You, me, Claire. I don't know where did Jody Hamilton or Barnett stand on that? Barnett pretty much
Jim said the only thing I remember Jim saying, he looked at Herd is that,
reclaim them before it
these guys have been in the wrestling a long time. These guys have like President Carter put him on the board. Remember that?
Yes.
After he gave Carter all the money, he said, these guys are in the wrestling business a long time. I think that may be a great idea, but we should iron it out before we put it on TV. Hoping that it was going to be dropped, but that was the line of his resistance was, you're going to do it anyway, guys. You better get prepared for it. So after this goes on, he doesn't say a word about this disaster. So we're sitting around the table, and the first thing he comes up with is, Ric Flair, we got to make him a Spartacus with a trident in a pierced ear and cut his hair. I said, yeah, that's like the Yankees going out
My
and
mouseish
taking Babe Ruth's
companions have
number
no curiosity
and taking
about
the
the
spot off
Khazra.
the
They're only
wall
interested in the
in
bounty
center
in their
field
hands.
and make his
But
name
I am convinced
Mickey
the
Mouse.
Khazra can be communicated
You know,
with.
he
It
didn't
is
want to hear it.
dangerous, to
Anything
be
we
sure,
came up with,
but it is a risk I'm willing to take.
You remember also when they got the rights to the Turner Classic Movies, the MGM library, they wanted to find a one-legged wrestler with an eye patch so he could be Long John Silver.
Yep. I mean, this stuff else you can't make up. And the other thing was, I mean, we would be united at that table and know that we didn't have a chance with this guy.
Was Jim Hurt heavily into psychedelics? I'm trying to understand.
He was like a 60s wrestling version of Mad Men. He wasn't in psychedelics. He wasn't even in color. When you looked at him, you saw him in black and white. He was so
Crusaders.
I mean, these just sound like the products of a
primal powers of Zakarum.
He went out into the desert.
No Paladin ever was.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, Al.
Oh, no. Go on, sir. Sorry.
No, that's what the next
It is my
came up with
pleasure to
after Long John
report
Silver
that I
and
have
after the
broken
Spartacus, they
prisoners
get
from
to the
Wortham.
big one.
Words have flowed from their mouths like blood from a wound. Our summoners can retrieve the weapon at your command, and the enemy shall be otherwise.
Across from one another so we could laugh together.
We could either nudge or give them roll
Yeah. Well, listen to this. I guess the greatest idea for a tactic is they're going to be ill tactics, but they can't lose. And we all look at them and just lose. How can't they lose? Because, that's the brilliant. They're going to have punch down, so they can never get their shoulders down. So Jimmy and I looked at one another, like, did we really hear that? And he says, what do you guys think? That can't see it now? They beat any baby face, and they can't get beaten, and they go on forever as champions. I looked at Jimmy and I looked at Jim Hurt and I said, Jim, that's the greatest idea I ever heard of. But I got a way to drop huge money in Fulton County Stadium to make you look like a genius. He said, what's that? I said, we'll go to the babyface team just like them, but falls count in here. And the babyfaces will come on and stumble, and they go around second base and stick their hump in the hole so they lay him flat and beat him 1, 2, 3. He said, great idea. Great idea when we go to the bathroom. Jimmy looks at me and he says, yeah, I know it was a risk, but he's going to try to do this, you know. I said, Jimmy, hopefully he won't. Hopefully someone will talk some sense into him. But the other thing about Hurd, Alice, you mentioned, he was a bully. He was a bully, and he bullied people he thought he could bully around. Don't you think so, Jimmy?
Well, yes, and that was the problem, is that I get he working at Pizza Hut, and the executives and the people that work at the pizza store, when the gruff guy that's your boss yells at you, it scares you. So he assumed that he could take that same approach, shall we say, with wrestlers and with promoters and booker and people in wrestling, and all that basically translated into was a bunch of people screaming back at him. You didn't have to start screaming. He would just start screaming. He once started screaming at me because I changed the cards and took Kim. Remember when I took Kim to Wyndham off the house shows, Kevin? And you remember why?
Yeah, I can't remember why.
We're in the meeting, and me and Kevin are next to each other, and Hurd says, hey, we gotta stop with all these card changes. And he lands, Cornette, I'm pointing at you when I say that. I said, what the? You just changed the cards. Akin to Wyndham, that's when he and Blackjack got in a little issue over money that wasn't exactly legitimate.
That's I remember now.
I changed the cards because I said, what are you doing? Making the page with a file in it? And he got so hot because I would say those things. I said, the guy's in fucking jail. And he got the fucking money on the wall to make fucking Fort Lauderdale.
The guy was stocky for a businessman. He might have played some sports at one time. You know, he had his thick neck. You know, he was old.
Yeah, thickhead too.
Dapper. But he would bully people. So one time, this is when I had the varsity club. And he had gone to Steiner, and I don't think he had gone to Wakanda yet, but he had gone to Dr. Chef and offered him a contract. Well, he offered me a contract and says, I'm not going to pay you what I'm going to pay these other guys because you're not going to be wrestling as much, you're just going to be managing. And he said it, you know, in a setting where there's a lot of people around, but he took me in the corner and said that. So that night, Dr. Jeff comes up to me and says, hey, brother, I need this contract. Are you going to sign or not? I said, hey, I'm not going to get the money you guys are going to get. It's a considerable cut. I said, but I'm going to go talk to him tomorrow and see what we can work out, because I know you have to do this. So I go to him and I say, hey, Jim, can I see you tomorrow? He said, yeah, come by my office, 11 o'clock, don't be late. So I'm in his office about 10:30, he isn't in. And I'm waiting, and that's when Janie was in there. She says, I'm not sure what time he's going to get. She's in here, but you want to see me, Sullivan? Come on in the office. I go in the office, and he says, sit down. I sit down, I say, you know, you don't know who I am, and you offer me a lot less money than these guys. I just want to talk to you for a minute. And I got up and went over and locked the door. I put over his desk, and I said, you want to show you who I am? He said, oh, goddammit, I was going to give you the money anyway. Here you go. He was just a bully. He was just a bully. Never told anybody that story before. I definitely wasn't going to hit him, Jimmy, because I knew I'd get arrested. But he was a bully mentality. If you just stood, like, Jimmy would stand up to him, Alice, like I'm saying, Jimmy's going to fight. Not today, this second. I mean, and he eventually fired me because I caught him in a corner and kind of confronted him about something. He said, okay, I'll get back to you. And he had Dusty call me up and fire me. But, I mean, this guy...
Well, as a matter of fact, remember his famous line when all of the Midnight Express and our contracts were up, we were going to leave, you know, we'd fed up with him, blah, blah, blah. And we walk into the Norfolk Scope one night, and Wahoo McDaniel, one of the agents, says, we had a meeting today, and everybody on the creative team, it was Kevin, and it was Jody Hamilton, and Funk, whoever was on the thing at that time, we unanimously outvoted Jim Hurt. Jim Ross was on it, and we voted you another year's contract. And we threw our bags down. We're like, well, fuck. And I've never seen anybody pissed off and get a contract. So when Hurd actually brought them to us in Indianapolis at a show, we've been on the road for about a week, hadn't been home, and we go into Indianapolis, and he walks up with an envelope and hands it to me and says, you know I was against this. And I said, we were too. So there was no way for us to really get along with each other, you know.
It was, and Jimmy, I found out how he got the job. Do you know how he got the job?
Well, Dietrich and the St. Louis connection, and as a matter of fact, he even talked to Larry Matisick, and he wouldn't give him enough money to even come over there and answer their questions.
Right, but I don't know if here's what happened. You know, nobody knew anything about wrestling over in that North Tower. But Dietrich worked for Hurd when Hurd ran the station that carried the wrestling from the Chase.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anything to do with producing. It was just on his station.
He was the studio director, actually. He directed the program, but that's in the days when they didn't smarten the TV crew up.
Right. So that's how he got the job. But, I mean, that place was so much in turmoil And it was the worst. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen from day to day. The guys on the booking committee, it was so frustrating because he had some great minds there. Jimmy, JR, Ole, Rick, Terry Funk, Eddie Gilbert. I mean, he had some brilliant, brilliant guys. And he wouldn't listen to a thing we said. And I think it was one of those things where he wanted to come in and he was intimidated by the guys because he was about 5'6". You know, he was probably in his mid-60s, but he was going to show them that he wasn't going to fight any rascals.
I found out he wasn't that old. He was just prematurely gray. It looked like he was wearing a gray coonskin cap. He had enormous hair, but it was incredibly thick. Yeah.
Judge us because we're loud. Judge us because we're free. The truth is, we can't hear you anyway.
Cholera outbreak in Yemen that we reported on earlier this year is now being called, quote, the largest ever recorded in any country in a single year, which is not the way diseases are supposed to work in the modern era. We're supposed to be better at dealing with them, not worse. But there are now 5,000 new cases just within Yemen every single day. And so far, the death toll is already over 1,000, a quarter of which, and growing, is children. Now, obviously, there's a civil war going on there, and because of that, Yemen's infrastructure, in all senses, but medically as well, has been largely destroyed, mostly due to the U.S.-backed Saudi airstrikes. And it's believed, as bad as it is now, that it will actually get worse once Yemen enters its rainy season later on this year. So that's obviously tragic news and only getting worse. Back here in America, we had Made in America week, and we've got a little bit of irony for you there. Not only during that week did Donald Trump and his family continue to produce almost every single one of their products outside of America, but Mar-a-Lago applied for 70 new foreign worker visas. Now, granted, they will be making American cakes. Beautiful big cakes in Mar-a-Lago, but it will not be Americans doing it necessarily.
So, you know, but you can't find Americans to do those jobs.
You can't.
My
spies tell me she's the child of the witch Adria, who is hiding in the deserts of Caldeum. Bring this news to the master at once.
You gotta outsource it.
I should have called it Irony Made in America Week or something like that.
I am dumbfounded. I think it's a failure of politics because I don't think I am at my core wrong. I mean, I'm wrong about a lot, but at its core, there was an effective anti-Trump strategy about making all of his products abroad, and it failed. It was never attempted correctly. It was not stuck to.
Late night posts did most of it.
Right, and maybe it wouldn't. Maybe the guy was impervious to any sort of dent in the armor. Well, there's strong evidence that that was the case. But I still felt like, hey man, this is a very base level. This is the kind of thing that Americans are like, kidding me? You don't make your stuff here. And we never really went after it. We went after the wrong things.
I mean, I think the point was made that the hypocrisy of Trump is on display in a lot of ways, but you're right. It's right there on every tag in a way that, you know, is demonstrable.
Exactly.
It was talked about. It was. But I think he, in a way, was bulletproof. And during the campaign, again, I know we always refer back to the campaign a lot, but, you know, it was sort of an important campaign. Hillary was anything but bulletproof. It seemed as though a lot of stuff stuck to her that wasn't sticking to him, and this is one of those things that didn't stick.
I heard that she produced most of her Trump products overseas. I don't think she got enough criticism for that. Yeah, but that's, of course, why we are mentioning this. In case any Trump viewers are watching this, you know he's not actually on your side, right? Finally, earlier this week, during the healthcare fallout from falling apart, and Donald Trump wants to get it back on track, he had a meeting where he called on the Senate to take away their recess in August and not rest until they passed a healthcare bill. And at that time, both Jared Jackson and myself predicted that that would probably be a do as I say, not as I do sort of thing. And there's now evidence that that is the case. The FAA issued flight restrictions around a Trump property in New Jersey for August 3rd to August 20th, which it generally does when Donald Trump is outside of the White House and staying somewhere else. So it looks like he's going to be spending about 3 weeks playing golf in New Jersey, which is, of course, as we all know, the best way to pass healthcare bills.
Imagine going to a New Jersey golf resort for 17 days when you could go anywhere in the world.
That is true.
Can you imagine going to a New Jersey golf resort for 17 days and your golf game still being so bad that you need to openly cheat to the point that everyone's talking
Is that,
about
I don't know, is that right? I didn't,
Oh, yes.
I've heard that.
Yeah. I have friends who are in that circle, you know, these CEOs who play golf with them, and say, oh my, he's a notorious cheater. Everybody talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
Behind his back.
Well, we're going to hear later on the show about how good at sports he is. We're going to break down if that's likely.
He's great at sports.
If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.
Poor Leah. She's done so much for us.
A monster. Oh, no, no, no.
The cat can rhyme, has made some of the greatest rap records ever.
He just helped me get into wanting to be real about expressing what I was expressing.
There goes the neighborhood!
His black rock band Body Count changed the face of white-dominated heavy metal.
Those blacks are too hardcore. This stuff ain't cool.
I don't know who else said, I'm gonna put together my own rock and roll band, which is a pretty deep thing to do.
And his years as a pimp and thief brought unprecedented realism to his tough guy acting roles.
You know that this guy is not
playing by everybody else's rules.
But for all his versatility, Ice-T says he's the master of just one trade.
H-U-S-T-L-E-R, hustler.
Rapping is a hustle to me.
I gotta get more money than you got.
I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, I love the music. Nah, I like money.
Him and his friends, they're hustlers, pimps, whatever they were, and they still are, that's what they are. Rapping just came along.
There'll be another one after me, a hustler.
Rap may be just a hustle to Ice-T, but his stark storytelling has taken him on an amazing journey, from crime-ridden alleys to the corridors of power.
I have the ability to break things down so a ghetto kid can understand what rich white people see, and rich white people can see what ghetto kids see. That's what I do. That's my job.
Ice began his life in the tranquil setting of suburban New Jersey. An only child, he was born in 1958 with the decidedly less menacing name of Tracy Lauren Marrow.
I did everything that every little kid did. Played football in the middle of the street, split up when the cars came through, and tapped the back of the car when it went by.
But the simple rhythms of childhood changed dramatically when Tracy was just 8 years old. His mother had a heart attack.
We were watching TV, and she was afraid that she started breathing hard. My father, we lived in a duplex house. He was just like, go next door. And I went next door. About 3 hours later, he came in. He told me. I remember I didn't cry. Damn.
Tracy's mother had passed away, and less than 5 years later, his father would die of cancer. At the age of 13, Tracy was an orphan, and very much on his own.
It was just really weird how I've been dealing with death my whole life, you know? You know, I don't know what it does to you. It just kind of just makes you kind of like harder, but I think more real.
Tracy bounced around between relatives, living for a while with an aunt in New Jersey, then being shipped across the country to stay in Los Angeles.
I thought I was coming out there just for a vacation, and all my clothes showed up out there. And I was really bitter about that because it wasn't like they asked me if I wanted to move to California.
He lived in L.A. with his Aunt Rosalie, who received child support for his care. Ice says the money was welcome, but he wasn't.
She was just a bitch to me, you know, like, so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna live here, you know, and there ain't no love here, obviously.
If Tracy felt unwanted at home, he was welcome at one of the toughest schools in the city, Crenshaw High.
They had casinos going on in that school. Man, they had damn near roulette wheels going in that thing.
They had like a little Vegas right up under the bleachers.
Fellow classmate Sean Butler introduced Tracy to the underground culture of gangsters and hustlers.
They were the ones with all the good stuff. The cars, the girls, the nice shoes, and of course, we wanted that look.
Soon, Tracy was the ringleader of his own group of high school hustlers.
Anything that we did generating money, yeah, pretty much Ice was involved.
And he found his greatest inspiration in the books of pimping pioneer, Iceberg Slim.
I-C-E-B-E-R-G. What's that spell? Iceberg came to read.
When I read The Pimp Life, that's the most flamboyant and best game ever. Because I don't care if you are a drug dealer, a gangster, or a murderer, or a thief. At the end of the day, you're trying to have sex, and the pimp controls sex. So the pimp is the master of the earth. He's the closest thing to living God.
Since I'm the coolest motherfucker that you ever heard, call me the Ice, or just the Iceberg.
Tracy took on the persona described in The Pimp Life. He changed his name to Ice-T. He altered the way he dressed, and even the way he talked.
I would go to school and quote hustler toasts. They're like rhymes.
Chitty chitty bang bang, nothing but a thing. You know, that was coming from Ice way back before anybody even had a concept of rapping.
By 1975, Ice-T was more at home on the streets than with his aunt. At the age of 17, he decided to strike out on his own.
I said, you know what, you don't want me here. Let me go. I went and found apartments for $100 a month, and I've never dealt with a living relative since.
Ice moved into a small apartment not far from school. He had his own apartment, a steady girlfriend, and no adult supervision.
Sex in the morning, sex at night, sex in the afternoon's all right.
I mean, I remember the first time, it was like, what? Whoa.
damn, it's like the male's first nut is the most incredible thing. He'll never do that again. It's like, it's not like, it's like, whoa, boom, boom, boom. You're like, wow.
A year later, he was a father.
By me not having anybody, I wanted to have a kid. It did something to me. It was like, you know, be a man. Step up to the plate.
Wanting to create the kind of stability he'd lost as a child, Ice did the most responsible thing he could think of.
City 130, rolling down the strip.
He joined the Army.
I carried M60s, 90mm recoilless rifles, which is a big thing, looks like a bazooka. Crazy.
His feet were firmly planted in Uncle Sam's Army boots, but Ice-T's soul was elsewhere. He was fascinated by New York's emerging hip-hop scene.
Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat.
When rap came out, I heard a record called Rapper's Delight, and I had already been saying rhymes, so I said, do that.
After receiving an honorable discharge in 1981, Ice returned home to Los Angeles and prepared to start a career in music to support his family. But his old school buddies, Ice-T's fellow hustlers, hijacked him at the airport.
And they literally picked me up in the airport, new Mercedes-Benz and Vets, and said, yo, this is what we doing right now. I'm like, well, what are we doing right now? We're robbing jewelry stores.
We kind of elevated our game, up the ante.
The promise of fast money derailed Ice-T's plans to settle down with his family. He agreed to support his child, but told his girlfriend they'd be better off without him around.
I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be out here hustling. I love you, but it's not really gonna make it. You better watch your back if you wanna be a high roller.
Ice-T left his family and embraced a new life as a jewel thief. The combination of street smarts and military discipline made him perfect for the job.
Ice had that heart. We're like, man, you know, we gotta have this shit. We gotta go for this shit, man. I can get as much stuff into my hand. Let me see the watch. Let me see by this light, that light, daylight, motherfucker.
Ice would stay on the wrong side of the law for years, but he'd soon find a less risky way to make money.
It ain't easy, but somebody gotta do it.
Next, Ice-T becomes a master of the streets.
Guys saw Ice always laced with bad bitches, and we saw girls hand him money.
And later, Ice-T goes from evading the police to attacking police brutality.
You can't grow up in South Central or come from the neighborhood without knowing about the way LAPD gets down.
It's real.
When Behind the Music continues. He'd made his mark as a thief and a hustler, but in 1983, Ice-T began living the life he'd always aspired to. Ruthless, flamboyant pimp.
I started dressing different. I started getting my hair done every day. I had this ill perm, and I got my fingernails manicured, and it was pimping. I'm no authority, but I know the DEAL when it comes to dealing with the female.
Ice quickly recruited half a dozen women and put them on the street. He collected their earnings and felt not a moment's remorse.
This type of pimping happens every day. It's not a big thing for men to have sex. Why is it a big thing for women to have sex? I saw him slap 4 chicks in one house, and I mean, I was like, what the is this? I mean, Ice used to be a hard motherfucker, man, on the real.
Oh my God, the rolls hard. Every player mentions me, the hustler of the century.
The hustler rhymes inspired by his hero, Iceberg Slim, were an essential part of Ice-T's street image. They would soon become something more.
I was at a beauty parlor getting my hair done, rapping to these girls, you know, like, hey, yo, I own islands off the coast of France, and I wear designer shirts and pants. And this guy's like, can I make money with that?
Some malevolent being is attempting to wrest control of my thoughts away from voice.
Ice took the runner up on his offer and laid down some tracks.
And there are times when I'm
and by the
unable
summer
to
of
control my
'83, the
body.
notorious king of the
As
underworld
knows,
was causing a sensation in the club world
he
with his
looks at me
very first single,
strangely
The
when he thinks
Coldest
me
Rap.
otherwise disposed.
There was a club called The Radio, and it was the first hip-hop club I'd ever been to. And Ice-T got up there, and he was hypnotizing.
Hip-hopping is a way of life with graffiti and rapping on the mic. What I'm rapping about, throw your hands in the air, wave them like you just don't care. When I said throw your hands in the air, I meant keep them there. and run your jury. It's going down. Now lay down on the floor.
Cops hate kids, kids hate cops.
In the fall of '83, movie producers saw Ice rapping at the radio.
My
They offered him a part and the chance to be on the soundtrack for a low-budget dance film called Break It.
Guilty of plotting against the kingdom.
$500
They
a day.
fear
I'm
my
not spending that
eye
on
will fall on
sneakers, you know what I'm
them
saying?
and discover
Ain't
their
no money.
heinous,
I'm a
treasonous
player.
plans
Yeah.
as well. Lazarus is the only
But
one
Ice was
I can
learning
still
that a
trust.
player's life wasn't just about fast cars and easy money.
My friends started getting knocked off. Everybody was getting killed or going to prison. And they would call me from prison and say, Ice, man, don't come here.
I was under, and I'm calling Ice, and, you know, I'm like, Ice, you know, from what I could see, this is not it, you know. These people here, they do not know about filet mignon. They don't know about Dom Perignon.
Ice got the message. He took the part in the movie.
It was my first taste of legitimate money and a job, a paycheck. It was first time cops were on my side. You want to park your car here? Yeah.
But Ice still wasn't ready to become a law-abiding citizen. He continued his dual life as ruthless pimp and rap poet until the spring of '85, when his life changed forever.
I was in a Porsche 914, one of those little bitty Porsches.
After a late night of clubbing, Ice was heading home as the sun was coming up.
I was out there, you know, late coming home. I just think I fell asleep.
At an intersection in southern Los Angeles, Ice-T's Porsche was struck by another car at high speed. The force of the impact crushed his pelvis and shattered his leg. Ice was unconscious for a day and a half. When he came to, he says doctors told him he might never walk again.
It made it so I couldn't hustle. It incapacitated. Gave me time to get a grip on myself.
For almost 3 months, Ice lay in a hospital bed, contemplating his life. He realized he was too bad for his own good.
I didn't have nobody show up at that hospital because I'm not being a nice guy. People weren't looking for me. They were like, well, I'm glad he's not around. Wherever he is, he's not here, you know? I didn't want to die like that.
Ice checked out of the hospital a changed man. He quit pimping and began the process of restructuring his life. Within months, he fell in love with a young woman named Darlene Ortiz.
When I met him, it was just like, I was like, this is a man.
They rented a tiny apartment in Hollywood, and Darlene took an office job to pay the bills, while Ice struggled to build a career in music.
The first 3 years, we never even saw a movie, like at a theater, you know, or went out to dinner, like at a restaurant.
She seen me go through like hustlers withdrawal, like sitting around worrying about a little rent when I could go out and in 20 minutes make 20 grand. But I'm not gonna do it.
Ice played the club and party circuit with his rapping partner, DJ Evil E. But the act was still just scraping by in the spring of '86 when Ice-T recorded the song 6 in the Morning.
6 in the morning, police at my door. Fresh to be this week across my bathroom floor.
The song depicted the graphic and violent life of a street hustler and helped give birth to a new genre of hip-hop, gangster rap.
When they call it gangster rap, I call it reality rap. It was just what I was living.
Some of the dark influence seeking this ability.
That, you know, really crossed the line and was on the cutting edge early in the game.
Ice-T hooked up with manager George Hinojosa, who quickly discovered that the major record labels were more interested in new wave bands than fresh rap acts.
When I was trying to get him a record deal, people didn't even think that rap music was a valid art form. So I had to not only convince him that Ice was a great rapper, but the music was actually not a fad.
Finally, Ice-T caught the ear of Sire Records president Seymour Stein.
He was so smart, so honest. He had a great imagination and a great skill with words.
Stein signed Ice-T to a record deal, and in the spring of '87, Sire released Rhyme Pays. Capturing the essence of the LA streets, the album was the first ever to carry a label warning parents about explicit lyrics.
It never hurt. In fact, I think that it drew attention to it.
With no video and little radio play, Rhyme Pays sold an astonishing 500,000 copies. But Ice-T had only just begun making waves. His lyrics were about to get more violent, his life more volatile. Next, Ice-T becomes a political punching bag in the race for the White House.
We changed the channel and it's Dan Quayle.
They are making money off a record that is suggesting it's okay to kill cops, and that is wrong.
And we're like, yo, this is real.
And later, the unlikely redemption of the ultimate anti-hero.
He's, I think, the least scary thug in the history of the world.
When Behind the Music continues. By the late 80s, Ice-T was thriving in the new world of music by rapping about his old world of mayhem.
Prey on the lane, no shame to the game. They all seek power, must have fame. I roll fresh.
But with songs like High Rollers on his second album, Power, he began using rap as a political pulpit, telling the uncensored story of street life, the perks and the pitfalls.
The whole video was set up to say, yeah, when I want kids to look at it and say, man, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to be. Doesn't that look cool? Doesn't that look cool? Well, I got news for you. Ain't nothing happening down that route. I got cats on death row from that. And real death row.
Iceberg will tell you, if you take this road, this is waiting straight up for your ass. You got to dig a person that's straightforward like that.
I don't play when it comes to my dope. I check my lyrics close, right with the microscope.
Straight talk was at the root of Ice-T's appeal.
Go to the library, get some more ammo, you know what I'm saying?
He shunned gimmickry in his sound and put the spotlight on his lyrics.
No problem, the record's revolving. The mixer, I'm the rap trickster.
We was real simple with the beats. We wasn't playing with the drums and all like that, all this way and that way, that way. We would come as simple as possible because Ice always liked to put his point across vocally. His most important thing in rapping was to make sure everybody understood and relate to what he's saying.
Colors.
But it wasn't until late '88 when Ice-T wrote and rapped the title song for a grim movie about LA street gangs called Colors that the full force of his ominous message reached the American mainstream.
Give me a break. What world do you live in? Death is my set. Guess my religion. Colors.
Ice was making a very political statement about the climate here and just putting it in ordinary terms that the everyday cat could pick up.
Listen to me, man. No matter what you do, don't ever join a gang.
With Colors, Ice-T crossed into the world of popular culture, keeping his menacing image intact.
Just look at me, man. Look at me.
And carving his unique niche in the world of Hollywood.
He came through, man, with that color. It was fantastic.
Ice-T, ripping the microphone the way I do. Listen close, my brothers, because I'm talking to you.
While casting for his new movie, New Jack City, in the summer of 1990, director Mario Van Peebles discovered his star in a most unlikely place. The next stall over in a nightclub bathroom.
I heard this brother say, you know, if you could put my body in a microscope and see one molecule in my entire system that gave it. So, I said, who is that talking? He said, whoever said that is going to be the star of my movie. Who is that? And it was Ice-T.
I'm Ice-T. O.G.
So,
in the microphone the way I do. Listen close, my brothers, because I'm talking to you.
While casting for his new movie, New Jack City, in the summer of 1990, director Mario Van Peebles discovered his star in a most unlikely place. The next stall over in a nightclub bathroom.
I heard this brother say, you know, if you could put my body in a microscope and see one molecule in my entire system that gave it. I said, who is that talking? He said, whoever said that is going to be the star of my movie. Who is that? And it was Ice-T.
O.G.
Back in the club, Mario offered Ice the part of Scotty Appleton.
I'm like, what am I play? What is this guy? He's a cop. I'm like, cop. A lot of the movie, Ice-T is undercover as a gangster. So he had to be someone that had enough street flavor to go undercover, handle his business on this, and have that credibility.
O.G. original gangster.
I call up some of my street homies. I'm like, yeah, they want me to play a cop. They're like, word? Can I be in the movie? They like, play whatever. Just get in the movie.
Quick when I speak, check my freak, keep my game tight. So many girls on my jock think I'm a movie star. 19, I got a $50,000 car.
Ice-T earned good reviews for his tough and streetwise portrayal of an undercover cop. But But the ink wasn't even dry on his critical raves before Ice was back in the studio with Body Count. One of the first African-American heavy metal bands ever formed.
Here come them black boys with the fancy car. Who gave them black boys those rock guitars?
The way it had been paved by Public Enemies going on tour with Anthrax, even by Run DMC and Aerosmith doing the song together. So I think there was some precedent for him thinking about doing that. But he was bold in that I think he was the first MC to say, you know, I'm going to put together my own rock and roll band.
With Body Count, Ice created a blistering musical sound with an incendiary message. His songs were violent, profane, and politically charged, confronting issues from racism to police brutality.
Damn, what a brother gotta do to get a message through to the red, white, blue.
Don't even gotta ask me. All you gotta do is step in news and just see the police brutality and the police just total misconduct without a concern.
And by the spring of '92, Ice's rants about police abuse were gaining alarming credibility.
I don't have enough octane power.
Times in 81 seconds. That's what the American public saw on videotape.
For more than a year, American airwaves have been saturated with images of LA police officers beating an unarmed African-American named Rodney King.
In violation of Penal Code Section 149 of felony.
4 officers were charged in the beating. And as their trial came to an end, many Americans felt the videotape had proved their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury saw it differently.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
The city exploded. Within hours, angry mobs were attacking whatever and whoever lay in their path, venting their bitter frustration on the streets of Los Angeles, burning, shooting, destroying.
The entire shopping mall just being stripped.
This is around the general area of Florence and Normandy.
In the end, 55 people were dead. Thousands of businesses left burned or looted. And suddenly, Ice-T was being asked by the mainstream media to bring perspective.
I was just one voice in the hood telling everybody, yo, messed up down here. Everybody's like, oh yeah, they're just trying to make money. Oh, the police ain't really that bad. Now when you see it go down, everybody's kind of looking at me saying, I don't even know what to say to you, Ice. I don't know what to say. You told us.
But many in the law enforcement community saw Ice-T as more of a threat than a visionary. Within weeks of the LA riots, a Dallas police newsletter accused him of encouraging violence with a Body Count song called Cop Killer.
When you have someone that makes a song that talks about a police officer being killed or going out and intentionally killing one, I mean, I think that's an affront and a slap in the face to the 700,000 plus law enforcement officers in the United States.
I felt like he was making an artistic statement about what was going on in his mind and with people that he knew.
I'm not in the favor of killing cops, but I'm in the favor of killing somebody who's trying to kill you. If you got a badge and you're gonna kill me, should I kneel to that badge? No, you're gonna be a dead cop. I'm not gonna allow, your authority does not allow you to kill me. I'm a human being and your law.
Police Fear the Tune will encourage inner-city youth to make targets out of lawmen.
I got maybe 1 or 2 news reports. I read them, and I didn't know that it would be anything. I thought maybe it was something in Dallas.
Concern grows tonight. Some lawmen want to boycott
against Warner Brothers Records and its parent company, Time Warner.
It's really heating up, I think. Well, weekend comes, Monday's a new week. Who knows? They could just move on from this.
Police officers all across the country right now are on edge about this song by Ice-T called Cop Killer.
Not a shot.
On Monday, June 15th, police groups around the country took up the cause against Ice-T.
I think from a moral and ethical standpoint, it's pretty disgusting.
And by the end of the week, Ice-T and Cop Killer were central issues in the 1992 presidential campaign.
We changed the channel and the gag quail.
The lyrics are outrageous.
And we were like, yo, this is real.
They are making money off a record that is suggesting it's okay to kill cops, and that is wrong.
It became the most important thing in Quayle's life. And he just talked about it all the time. He couldn't ever shut up about it.
Die, 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 pig, die. There was an election year going on that time, and police were under siege. And some genius said, there's a record out, and let's change the mode. Let's make the press go after this record.
It was easy to point to him and say he's what's wrong, when really he was pointing at them and saying you're what's wrong.
In response to the attacks, Time Warner CEO Gerald Levin wrote a letter to the Wall Street Journal defending Ice-T's right to freedom of expression. Cop Killer, he wrote, is a shout of pain and protest, rooted in the reality of the streets.
They had my back, man. Warner Brothers was a free speech place. They said, hey, it's not our job to control what our artists write.
But the pressure on Warner Brothers continued to mount. From local city councils to the U.S. Congress, the call to silence Ice-T was becoming definite.
There's a difference between the description of evil through art and the marketing of evil through commerce.
Finally, President George Bush joined the fray.
It is wrong for any company to issue records that approve of killing law enforcement officers. It is sick.
When the president says your name in English, it hits the fan.
It went to a crescendo of intensity and culminating at the Time Warner shareholders meeting that was held in Beverly Hills that year.
The hell with Ice-T! He should be smashed!
While officers demonstrated outside the hotel, Hollywood heavyweights were inside, launching their own attack on Ice-T and Time Warner.
I got my brain on hype. Tonight'll be your night. Die, 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 pig, die.
Here is Charlton Heston in his stentorian way, you know, a schooled actor, reading rap lyrics.
If you from Mars, you got a f***y, we will f*** you.
In context, it's, you know, it may be off-putting or, you know, thought-provoking.
I know your family's grieving. F*** 'em. Catchy little number, isn't it?
But out of context, it really looks strange.
Ice had planned to stay away as the drama he'd inspired unfolded, but fate intervened.
So I was riding by, you know, and I see the cops with the picket signs walking by.
Out on an errand with his girlfriend Darlene and their new baby, Ice-T says he happened on the protesters.
And so I tell Darlene, I said, look, there are some cops with the pickets.
Someone said, there's Ice-T.
And so they went for their camera, and they're getting ready to take a picture of me.
He beat his horn and stuck his left hand out the window and flipped us all the birds.
So I just threw it up, like, here, you want a picture?
That gave us a lot of satisfaction that we were finally getting to him.
Despite his flippant attitude, Ice was feeling the heat, and so was Time Warner.
I went to New York, and I met with the people from Time Warner. It was hours and hours and hours of fruitless argument. All of them saying, this is really harming the company. Let it go. And me trying to say, this is really, really important First Amendment issue. This is, you know, this has to do with trust of our artists. We never did come to an understanding.
With Warner executives still struggling to clarify the company's position, Ice-T finally threw up his hands and ended the controversy.
I don't want to be a martyr. I don't want to have them destroy my life at the hands of the First Amendment. Okay, he stood up for the free speech. So I said, well, you know what? If we pull the record, I can still say police, and we can keep it going.
But keeping it going would be harder than Ice-T ever imagined. Next, from presidential enemy to philosopher king.
The objective is to get out of this school, infiltrate the system, and take it over.
And later, Ice-T achieves the pimping world's highest honor.
Ice is not somebody that heard about the gang. He was probably born into the gang.
When Behind the Music continues. Looks for a new disc called Home Invasion. Once again, he was railing against police brutality and depicting another violent confrontation with an officer of the law.
I catch them all alone, put them in the prone.
Pop, 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 pop goes the 9.
Desperate to avoid another cop killer fiasco, Ice says Warner Brothers executives scrutinized every word.
And then they were just very concerned. They were like, you want to look at the lyrics, and I was like, you guys are scared.
You catch a left and a right fist.
And they looked at that record with a real magnifying glass.
There was not only a microscope on Ice-T, there was a microscope on all rap music and on this label. Suddenly people were expecting bad things and looking for bad things.
Spurred on by the heat produced by Ice-T, the media, parents, and politicians began dissecting everything about rap.
It is that we hold responsible for a lot of the filth, pornography, racism, misogyny, sexism that we find in much of our music today. Wise guy, R-E-S-P-E-C-T in the industry. That's something that you'll never see.
Pressure on Warner Brothers was intensifying, and the company that had once defended Ice-T's right to express himself seemed to be retreating from the fight.
It really pains me to say this, but I think ultimately the company abandoned Ice-T, or at the most generous, didn't support him when he needed to support the most.
We wrote a letter to him which said, at this moment I'm a liability to you, but at the same time you're a liability to me. Because I really don't think they'd attack me if I wasn't on a major label.
In February of '93, the record label and Ice-T announced they were parting ways, and Ice was on his own in an industry wary of both him and his music.
It was a great wake-up call for me. I learned that, you know, you live it alone. This is your life. It seemed like you got a lot of people behind you, but when it happened, that's how I'm living.
That September, Ice-T released Home Invasion on his own label, determined never again to entrust his career to a major record company.
I think we just rather do it ourselves, because all I got is my integrity. That's all I got. And as soon as that's jeopardized, there'll be no Ice-T.
The madder I get, the higher the debt, the deeper you get. The bigger the sweat.
Without a big label behind him and with diminishing record sales looming ahead, Ice sought out a new career path to support Darlene and their son, Little Ice.
Action. Damn right they ain't from around here.
He took every acting role he could get, from prestige parts in high-budget films to lowbrow, straight-to-video fare.
A friend with weed is a friend indeed. From being from the streets and being broke, when somebody comes in and says, hey, we got a movie for you, and we'll pay you 50 grand a day, you gotta be a pretty arrogant motherfucker to say, you know, I don't want to do it.
Cause I'm a pimp and a player.
Hollywood was unfazed by Ice-T's notorious reputation and found the man far different from the myth.
Watch for the ricochet.
It's one of the few people that I've never heard anybody say anything bad about. Cops like him. You know, after cop killing, that's quite a transition.
By the mid-90s, Ice-T had charmed his way back into mainstream success with a network TV show called Players.
He came in to NBC and he turned them out of their shoes. I mean, literally, after a half-an-hour meeting, he had them in his pocket.
You guys cops? Neighborhood watch. Just taking a little fight out of crime.
Through his years in the street game, the music game, and the Hollywood game, Ice-T had developed an unusual but winning philosophy.
We'd like to welcome Ice-T.
And he was ready to share it with the world.
What makes you get into crime is the lack of hope.
He took his street wisdom to the most prestigious universities in America, Harvard, Stanford, and NYU.
I'm more worried not about the liquor that's in our neighborhood, but what makes a brother just want to hang out and be drunk? What makes you want to do that? If there wasn't no St. Ives, you get drunk off some Dom Perignon, you know what I'm saying? It don't matter. You just lost hope. The kids wanted to know, why do you think this? And what do you think makes this happen? Not how did it happen, but what do you think makes it happen? Was it really ain't how much you say this record say I got no time on the mic to play. The objective is to get out of this school, infiltrate the system, and take it over.
As he grew into his new role as a teacher from the streets, Ice-T wrote his textbook, an autobiography called The Ice Opinion.
It really gained acceptance in philosophy classes in college. So the next thing you know, I'm going to these universities, giving me honorary PhD, you're saying that I'm this, I'm that. And they pretty much parallel my philosophy closest to Nietzsche. Being black ain't easy, practice is sweet. But health and liberty is all we need for us to do.
After 4 years away from music, Ice-T returned to the studio in 1996 to record Return of the Real and extend his message to the next generation.
Don't have them come up in this hellish habitat of shanks and steel.
Next, author Pimp to the End, the hustler at home.
Be the player.
Yep.
You hustler?
Pimp.
Pimp, hustler, player.
When Behind the Music continues.
Or just the iceberg. Y'all got it?
After lives as a rapper, robber, and urban philosopher, Ice-T has reaped the rewards of his successes in crimes and rhymes.
What is this, the ice or just the iceberg?
Nowadays, he dwells in a mansion high in the Hollywood Hills, living a high life peppered with reminders of his days on the road. From the sharks in his fish tank to the pit bull by the pool.
This is the infamous 187. 187, which stands for homicide.
His luxury home is a monument to Ice-T's killer instinct.
This house is all pimps. The Kool-Aid is pimp Kool-Aid. We're all pimps and hoes. This is where I live.
It's totally contradictory and thrilled about it. His feet of clay are like kicked up on the coffee table.
At home, Ice's contradictory qualities come together in a strangely unified whole. The dedicated player has maintained a committed relationship with Darlene for more than 15 years. He's also devoted to their son, Little Ice. Even if his parenting style is a little unorthodox.
You hustle?
Pimp.
Pimp, hustler, player. For life.
We're not going to hide things from our son. What we'll do is we'll explain to him what's good, what's bad, and teach him.
Still, Ice-T could never be described as a homebody. After nearly 2 decades of breaking through musical barriers, he crossed another divide in 1999.
I never go broke, baby. I got problems.
By joining the Warped Tour, a Gen X thrash rap roadshow, Ice-T brought his message to a new crop of fans.
This one here shipped 500 G's.
DJ's dad. It was just a great record. What more could you ask?
His musical influence is documented in his new greatest hit CD, The Evidence. It was released in the summer of 2000 on his new internet label, Coroner Records.
I'm in charge. I'm the one stockholder.
True to his word, Ice has released all of his own albums since leaving Warner Brothers in 1993.
When you put yourself in a position where you have Coroner Records, or you just put your record up on the internet, and you may only need to sell 100,000, 500, whatever, you don't care about record sales, you can get back to art.
These days, Art is a groundbreaking musical project that could only come from the mind of Ice-T.
I'm working on a new record right now called the Pimp Penal Code, Back to Pimpin', which is going to be 10 tracks, jazz tracks, breaking the game down into 10 different sections. Each track is co-found by a real pimp from different cities. Put it in a book form with pictures, and you sell the record for $100. The game is to be sold and not told.
Years after he collected his last pimp's commission, Ice-T still revels in the world of hustlers and players. In 1996, a Pimps group called Famous Players International presented Ice-T a Lifetime Achievement Award, an honor bestowed by the group's founder, pimp-turned-preacher, Bishop Don Magic Wand.
Ice is not somebody that heard about the game. He was probably born into the game.
Don Magic Wand says Ice-T is an inspiration, living proof that success in the underworld can lead to success in the legitimate world.
Ice has rose to a level that now he can help somebody and reach back and get some of them brothers that are still caught up in the system. That's why he deserves the Lifetime Achievement Award as a famous player.
He ain't like up in the hills without his hand down. His hand is down, and he's always bringing people out of the ditches.
Peace to all the gangsters, cause I got a lot of love.
He's got the happy family, the big house on the hill, and a solid career. His latest caper is a new role as a detective on Law & Order, Special Victims Unit.
Report 3 units into it. Touch and go shall survive.
And while he may still be a hustler at heart, Ice-T says he'll always stay true to his soul.
Most artists are so foolish. They just want to say what they think is going to better their career. I really don't care, because this is a dream for me. If I can't do it the way I want to do it, I just won't have it, right? But I'm not going to say, well, no, I didn't really mean that. I mean, I'm sorry. What am I sorry about?
Say they get my...
Next, who's the magic and the money behind hip-hop's biggest names? Yakko Simmons, behind the music, is next.
I throw the word back, they take the right back.
Let's see you.
See you. That's the price you pay for big fame. The place the phone ring.
How does that feel?
The bass line boomed, the white boy crooned, and the young girl swooned.
Hi, I'm the Rap Critic, and welcome to The Little Trick, where I do a review for 3 rappers who don't little or little. Of course, Lil Wayne. And I really don't think I have to explain why. Certain popularity has exploded over the last couple of years. So it only felt right to do a review for the self-proclaimed best rapper alive. Wait, did Mos Def, The Genius, Rakim, Jay-Z, KRS-One, and Nas all die before he started rapping? Anyways, for such a boastful thing, he must have some lyrics to back himself up. So let's look at his chart-topping single, Lollipop. See how good it really is.
I said he's so sweet, I wanna lick the rapper. So I let her lick the rapper.
Hey, I think something's wrong with his voice.
Okay, the mouth head swag like mine.
Oh, auto-tune. How about we just skip to the next single? What is that? No. I refuse to subject myself to the musical version of water torture that is this song. Please, please, give me anything that is not this. Song with potential? What is it? Mrs. Officer? Well, I'm prepared for the police jokes, but the self-proclaimed best rapper alive can give us a good combo of good beat and good lyrics, right? So let's get started. Goodbye, subtlety. Seriously, what happened to R&B's sense of romance? I can't even imagine a guy saying that to a girl, but that's a police officer. I mean, how does the song even continue after a line like that? It should go like this. That's right. Your hand should instinctively slap your own face for saying something that's stupid. Okay, listen. When your first line is basically "let me get up in them guts," it's a little late to get poetic afterwards.
All the abominable stalling. In case it was not clear, I need the sacrifices now. I've heard enough of your idle complaints that the villagers have fled from the highlands, leaving no one left to sacrifice.
Screw it.
Let's come up with
Let's
something.
get to the verse, but then surely
Your
awesome Lil Wayne has an amazing verse of Fire Wayne.
In the latest drive, got stopped by a lady cop.
Now we're going to get into the first question of these outlines to describe the situation, right? I mean, look at the way he's rapping. You know he's got a good song coming on.
But the uniform kept so tight, she read me very right. She put me in a car, she got up all night.
Punchlines? Slick wordplay? Any of that in this song?
She said I have the right to remain silent. Now I gotta holler, sounding like a siren.
Okay, saying her voice is going to sound like a siren. It's a lot better than saying her body, But, where's the stuff that makes you worthy of calling yourself the best rapper alive? Where's all that? No, you don't have to say that. Okay, alright, let's just get on with this, please. We stop this. Thank you.
She the law, and she know I'm the boss, and she know I can hide. Ain't lost a lot.
Well, that was the first real sample of and that was kind of lame. Honestly, I don't even want to think about that lyric right now. Mostly because it would mean I'd have to put more thought into the lyrics than he did.
And all she want me to do is fuck the police.
Okay, who didn't expect that?
Talking about.
Oh, really? Wait, what? Is that even English? What? Screw that chorus. Moving on.
And after we got done, I said, later, wish you made
Leah must be back in history, crying over the old man's corpse. She'll soon have another one to cry over. Yours.
911 is the phone number for the police,
the
and she's
butcher.
giving that number, which is obviously not a real number, which probably means she doesn't want to talk to him, and you can get arrested for that.
What?
And I beat it like a cop.
Guess not.
Baby, yeah, I beat it like a cop.
No, you don't have to say his name. Yeah, it's still more funny.
I wish I could do that.
To get more analytical though, why does he say the word butt so many times? Shouldn't he say a line like this? But so over the time. Slightly better. I had to bring that I didn't even see this guy in that for a while. Not writing the lyrics beforehand doesn't make the songs good if the lyrics are bad anyway. That's like doing this. Hey, guy number 2. Yeah, guy number 1. I drew this. That looks terrible. But I did it blindfolded. It still sucks. And most of the song is just one bad pun after another. I understand that every song that a great rapper makes is not going to be great in and of itself. But I had to skip 2 songs to get to a tolerable one. A tolerable one. And I mean, I've listened to 1 or 2 of his, mixtape songs, and they're actually pretty good. But all of his album single stuff seems to be just bad. And I know what you're saying. And to that I say so. I mean,
Take your sword.
I remember now. I was an archangel. I was. You have restored my Belial.
Belial?
We must move quickly. Time grows short, my friends.
And how will we find...
We won't have...
I'm not going... Yes.
I have called for a...
My friend, shall we depart to Caldeum?